Hey, everyone! If you enjoy my quantum audiobooks, you can support me by becoming a Patreon member. Your support helps me keep creating, and you'll get exclusive perks. You can also access my audiobooks directly through Google Drive. Check out the link in the description. Now, let's get started.
Jumping down from the bridge with a spider web, Jessica Drew came to Lin and said, "Lin, what are you doing?" During the period when Natasha took her in, Jessica Drew heard her talk about Lin. She also learned about Lin's character from Natasha. So Jessica Drew was unwilling to believe that Lin brought people to such a remote place for the purpose of murder. But looking at the girl with a face full of fear and her neck being pinched in Lin's hand, Jessica still asked in confusion. Looking at Jessica Drew's surprised questioning that suddenly appeared, Lin did not explain. Instead, the eye of judgment was activated again. "Tell me, who are you? And what is your purpose in pretending to be Kelly Stone and deliberately approaching me?" With Lin's sharp shout, Kelly Stone collapsed in fear and screamed 113. Jessica Drew, who was standing by, immediately understood what happened after hearing Lin's question. Then he looked at the imposter. Finally, under the effect of the eye of judgment, Kelly Stone screamed and changed. The originally fair skin turned dark green, and there were ears on her head that were different from those of normal people. "Ward!" Seeing Kelly Stone turned into an alien in front of her, Jessica Drew was immediately shocked. Lin frowned. The imposter who had restored his original appearance was exactly the same as the scroll. The only difference was that the ears seemed to have become sharper. Lin knew that a group of Skrulls would replace many people in the future and try to control the Earth. But they didn't start so early. If it is said that the later shield was because of Hydra, even if it was reorganized, it would not be as powerful as before. It is understandable that he could not take care of the Skrulls in all aspects, thus creating an opportunity for them to take advantage of. But now, Nick Fury is still on Earth, and S.H.I.E.L.D. is very powerful. In this case, even if the Skrulls want to move, they have to be cautious. What's more, according to Neri's character of never trusting anyone, at this point in time, if the Skrulls have any unusual movements, I'm afraid Nick will directly reach out and pinch them to death. The most important thing is that Lin En did not leak any blood cells. Even after gaining the ability, he had never been to any hospital when he was sick before. So even the Skrulls could not get his own cells. Perhaps this is why the Skrulls disguised themselves as Kelly Stone to approach him. Looking at the Skrull in front of him turning back to his true form, Lin En frowned and asked, "Why did you disguise yourself as Kelly Stone to approach me? Who instructed you to do this? What is your purpose?" Faced with Lin En's question, the Skrull, whose spirit had been in the eye of judgment, was just about to answer Lin's question as he was surrounded by fear. The next second, the whole person began to burn from the inside out. Oh my God! Watching the Skrull burning from the inside, even the flames were azure blue. Jessica immediately asked Lin, who had let go of her hand, "Lin, how can this alien be natural? And the color of the flame is so weird." Faced with Jessica's curious question, Lin glanced at the Skrull who had fallen to the ground and lost his breath. A trace of haze flashed in his eyes. "This is a kind of black magic." As he said that, Lin took out his mobile phone and called Natasha. "S.H.I.E.L.D." Walking into the Quinjet, Natasha looked at the target of this mission, then flew into the air in the Quinjet, ready to go to Europe immediately. Just as the fighter plane took off, the phone rang. After picking up the phone and taking a look, he found that it was Lin En calling, so he pressed the autopilot. To read the exciting novels, go to Full Novel Network. "Good afternoon, Lin En. What can I do for you?" Natasha had communicated with Nick Fury, and as long as Lin En asked her for help, she could choose to give up the task at hand at the first time. After all, Lin En's importance in S.H.I.E.L.D. is much higher than those tasks. "Natasha, do you still remember Kelly Stone?" Faced with Lin En's inquiry, Natasha thought for a few seconds. "It's the daughter of New York Senator Ken Stone, the girl you helped exorcise last year?" "That's right." Told Natasha what happened. After listening to Lin's story, Natasha immediately said, "Give me 5 minutes." After hanging up the phone, Natasha asked people to investigate the traces of Keniston's family while flying a fighter plane to where Lin was. A few minutes later, the Quinjet slowly landed on the open space under the bridge. Seeing Natasha getting off the Quinjet, Jessica Drew immediately came forward. "Oh my God, Natasha, you actually flew here by plane? This is so cool." Hearing Jessica's slightly surprised voice, Natasha smiled at her. "Originally, I was going to Europe to perform other missions." While speaking, she came to Lin's side and watched Lin squatting on the ground to examine the body that had been charred and gradually turned into ashes. She also squatted beside Lin En and said, "I just asked someone to investigate the Keniston family and found that his family announced to go to Hawaii for vacation 10 days ago. But according to the news from Hawaii, the Keniston family did not appear there. And I asked others to contact Keniston, but the call was not connected." At this point, Natasha asked Lin En, "So what is the purpose of this alien approaching you? Can you guess it?" "It's not clear yet." Shaking his head, Lin En thought for a few seconds about the abnormality of the scroll under the Eye of Judgment. Then he said, "She should be controlled by someone to approach me. As for the purpose and the person behind it, I don't know yet. But the person who controls her should be a black wizard or Wizard 1.6. Speaking of this, Lin En also felt a little strange. After all, if it was a mystic wizard who fell into darkness or some black wizards, then the New York Magic Temple would definitely not know nothing. And the Supreme Sorcerer Ancient One would not pretend that nothing happened. But unfortunately, those mystic wizards have not appeared until now. This is a bit wrong. Could it be that this is also what the universe should experience? So Ancient One will pretend not to see it? But if this is true, then who is the controller behind this scroll? Why do they target me? Is it because of my identity as a psychic? Or because of my identity as a judge? Different identities represent different serious situations. Shield, Nick Fury's office. Scrolls? Are you sure? Listening to Natasha's report on the other end of the phone, Nick Fury's expression instantly became solemn. On the side, Alexander Pierce pricked up his ears when he heard Nick Fury mention the scrolls. Did anything happen to his people? On the banks of the Hudson River, in front of the pile of spontaneously combusting ashes, Lin is very sure that the other party is a scroll. Why does Lin know that the other party is a scroll? How did he know it? Faced with Fury's question, Natasha glanced at Lin and Jessica Drew, who was curious about the large number of Quinjets not far away. Then she replied, "Fury, Psychic Lin may not know about the scrolls, but Judge Lin should know." Natasha deliberately used the identity of Judge to remind Nick Fury. Tell him not to forget that in addition to these two identities, Lin En is also the messenger of Nemesis, the goddess of vengeance. Sure enough, Nick Fury, who understood Natasha's hint, nodded. "Tell 02 Lin En, I will have someone check whether there are any missing scroll cases recently." Okay. After hanging up the phone, Natasha repeated Nick Fury's words. Although Natasha still doesn't know what the scrolls are and why Nick Fury still has such a force in his hands. But it is obvious that she is not a high enough level, so she doesn't know these things. Maria Hill should know. "Do you want to take a ride back?" Standing up from the ground, Natasha asked with a smile. "I drove here," pointing to her Chevrolet, Lin En replied. After all three people left, a golden magic portal opened. The Supreme Sorcerer Ancient One and Mordo came to the place where the incident just happened. Looking at the pile of ashes, Mordo squatted down to check it, and then said to Ancient One, "Teacher, it is indeed the energy fluctuation of black magic. Are we sure we don't want to remind that Lin En?" Faced with Mordo's question, the Supreme Sorcerer Ancient One waved his hand, and the pool of ashes instantly reorganized into an energy ball. Looking at the black energy ball in front, Ancient One broke it up again. Just a poor man carrying the entire universe. Maybe Lin En can solve the doubt in his heart. After saying that, Ancient One glanced to the right, and then disappeared with Mordo. Just as the two disappeared, a wave of energy appeared in the direction that Ancient One had just glanced at. Soon, a man wearing a magic robe, with a third eye on his forehead and a silver mask on his left cheek, and a hunchback guy who was obviously not a human appeared here. If it is the owner of the spoiler system, or Lin En is still here, then you will know that the guy with the silver mask on the left half of his face is Stephen Strange. Master, did the Supreme Sorcerer Ancient One discover us just now? Faced with the question of his subordinates, Stephen Strange, wearing a silver mask, nodded. The reason why Teacher Ancient One appeared here and dispersed the energy group was to warn me to follow the rules. If I didn't send that scroll to approach Lin this time, but I went to him personally, then Teacher Ancient One would attack me. Hearing what Strange said, his subordinates asked in confusion, Master, you can kill the Lord of our Hell Dimension. Can't you defeat this so-called Supreme Sorcerer? What do you know? Slowly walked to the pool of ashes. Stephen Strange's eyes were full of gloom. Before I became the Supreme Sorcerer, I thought my teacher's ability was just very powerful. She even died at the hands of Cassius. But it was not until I became the Supreme Sorcerer that I really realized the gap between me and her, and I knew that the reason she died was because she knew I could win, because she was tired of living. Samoro, what Teacher Gui said is right. I am indeed the most talented of all the Supreme Sorcerers. At this point, Stephen Strange raised his left hand. To read the exciting novels, go to Falun Novel Network. Looking at his left hand that used to tremble a little, it is now dry like a monster's claw. Stephen Strange's eyes were filled with disgust. But she lied to me. She is the most powerful Sorcerer Supreme. Hearing what Stephen Strange said, Samalo hunched over and expressed his disapproval. He saw with his own eyes how this powerful magician killed his dimensional lord. Could it be that the Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One also has the ability to kill the dimensional lord? Although I came from hell, it doesn't mean I'm stupid. If she is really as powerful as Stephen Strange, why didn't she dominate the earth? What should we do now? Master, don't we take Lin away? If it doesn't work, we can target the Spider-Woman named Jessica Drew. Although she is a clone, she is already on the Spider Totem, and we were brought here by her by chance when we traveled through the dimension. So we can use her. Faced with Samalo's question, Stephen Strange shook his head. No need to be so troublesome. At this time point, everything has just begun. The Battle of New York has not happened yet, and all the cycles have not started yet. So time is on our side. Since Teacher Gu warned me to do things according to the rules, then I will do it according to the rules. Okay. After saying that, Stephen Strange's dry hand turned. The dark energy that was just dispersed by Ancient One gathered again. Reward you. Stephen Strange injected the dark energy into Samalo's body casually, ignoring his excited thanks. Looking at the direction where Lin En and others left, he turned around and disappeared with his men to the riverside. Manhattan, Lin En's apartment. After returning to the apartment, Lin En took out a bottle of soda water from the refrigerator and drank while thinking. But after thinking for a long time, he didn't have any clues. But one thing is certain, that is, the other party is indeed coming for him. As for the person behind the scenes, it can't be a witch like Agatha. Since he couldn't figure it out, Lin En simply put it aside for the time being. He opened the system and looked at the creation point, then edited a new video. As long as he is strong, no matter who the enemy is, he will have a way to deal with it. 3 days later, in Toby Stark's villa, looking at the rocket model in front of him, Steve Rogers crossed his arms and said, "Are you sure you want to go to the moon? I have checked the information recently. Although there were 6 moon landings in America from 1969 to 1972, there's been no landing since then. Besides, this time you have to do more than just land on the moon, but also look for Howard on the moon. This is much more difficult than landing on the moon. The most important thing is that no one knows whether there will be danger on the back of the moon or even inside the core." After hearing Tony Stark was full of confidence despite the worry in his tone. "Don't compare me with those guys in NASA, Steve. I'm Tony Stark. Besides, Lin will accompany me to the moon this time, even if there is any danger on the moon. Or if there is any failure on the way, with Lin here, do you still have to worry about me not being able to come back?" Looking at Tony's confident look, Steve was silent for a few seconds, then nodded gently. "Indeed, Lin's ability is very mysterious, and his magic portal can send you back. But I believe him. Tony blinked at Steve and suddenly asked, "Let's not talk about my business for now. Haven't you and Natasha been assassinating those members on the Hydra list and S.H.I.E.L.D.? How have you been doing recently?" "It's been going relatively smoothly." Pulling a chair and sitting opposite Tony, Steve said, "Under normal circumstances, if the Hydra hidden in S.H.I.E.L.D. keeps dying, it will definitely cause panic among them. But because of Alexander Pierce above, under pressure, every time a Hydra member has to perform a mission, the risk of death is very high. Plus, we will deliberately let some Hydra members go back alive. So, until now, those people have not discovered that S.H.I.E.L.D. is targeting them." At this point, Steve laughed at himself. It's a bit ironic to say it, but Tony, in fact, those Hydra agents are even more willing to sacrifice their lives for S.H.I.E.L.D. than S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Looking at Steve's bitter smile, Tony was about to speak when the system ring suddenly rang in their ears. "Tip, a new video has appeared. Please enter the viewing room within 5 minutes if you are a spoiler system owner. If you fail to enter the viewing room on time, you will be deemed to have automatically waived the right to watch this video." Hearing the system ring, the two looked at each other and then skillfully came to the prepared room. After making sure they would not be disturbed and that all the notes were ready, the two of them went straight into the theater. "Hi, Mr. Stark, Captain Rogers." Seeing Tony and Captain America enter the theater, the Garfield version of Peter Parker, who came in first, immediately greeted them excitedly. After leaving the theater last time, the more Peter Parker recalled the videos he had seen in the theater, the more he admired the Avengers of this universe. After all, compared with what he did, even compared with Mr. Reed and his friends, the Avengers of this universe are the real superheroes. "Hi, Spider-Boy. How have you been recently?" Looking at Peter Parker, Tony greeted him happily. "By the way, before we parted last time, didn't you say you wanted to confess to the girl you had a crush on? How was it? Did it work?" Faced with Tony's teasing, Peter Parker scratched his head a little embarrassedly. "Wow, it seems that our Spider-Boy is really shy. How about it? Do you need me to teach you a few tricks? As long as you do what I say, I guarantee that you can get the girl you like as quickly as possible." When Peter Parker heard that Tony was going to teach him how to pick up girls, his eyes lit up immediately. But before Tony could continue to show off his professionalism, Natasha on the side directly said, "Come on, Tony, those girls who accompanied you before Pepper, how many of them didn't do it for your money, or to have a scandal with you and become famous? Maybe only Pepper is sincere to you now, but since you and Pepper have been together, she controls you tightly. If Peter really follows your method to pursue that girl, she will probably never pay attention to Peter in her life." Hearing Natasha's sabotage, Tony Stark rolled his eyes, and Peter Parker on the side subconsciously stepped back 2 steps from Tony. It was too close. I almost believed that Mr. Stark was going to teach me his method. When I thought about what I would do if I really believed him, and then treated Gwen in those ways, causing her to ignore me for the rest of her life. Oh my God, this is simply the most horrible nightmare of my life. To read the exciting novels, go to Falun Novel Network. Sure enough, superheroes are also human. Although I admire them very much in my heart, I'll forget about other aspects. Seeing Peter Parker's distrustful eyes, Tony Stark said he was a little hurt. Turning around and looking at Thor, who was laughing, he frowned and said, "Wow, isn't this the male protagonist of Asgard's hot spot? Why, you're not going back to Earth? I heard from Fury that you're with Ms. Jane Foster on Earth. TSK, you haven't come back for so long. Aren't you afraid that Ms. Jane Foster will be with other men?" Hearing what Tony said, Natasha shook her head with a hopeless expression. Then he walked to Wanda, who was sitting on the other side, looking at the extremely lively scene here, with some envy in her eyes, but unwilling to join. Nick Fury, who entered the theater, said directly to Thor, "Don't listen to Tony's nonsense. Ms. Jane Foster has not been with other men, Kings. She has been waiting for your news." "I know. I have full trust in Jane." Shrugged nonchalantly, Thor said seriously, "After all, after getting used to being with me, where can Jane find a boyfriend as powerful as me? TSK. Looking at Thor's narcissistic appearance, Tony Stark looked like he had eaten something bad and then sat in his seat. Steve looked at Thor and asked with a smile, "When will you come to Earth again?" The Rainbow Bridge is still being repaired. Faced with Steve's inquiry, Thor answered seriously, "According to the progress of the repair, it should be soon. When the Rainbow Bridge is repaired, I will come to Earth as soon as possible." After all, before Thor finished speaking, everyone was surprised to see a tree man with a height of 2.4 meters and green leaves on his arms walking in with his eyes wide open. Wow! Everyone was shocked when they saw Groot, the tree man, appear in the theater. Hey, can trees now become humanoid? According to what Lin once said, the big tree has become a spirit. Looking at Tony's shocked expression, Thor laughed and said, "This is the tree people in the universe." Tree people. After hearing Thor's explanation, everyone suddenly realized that the tree was an alien. "I'm Groot." Looking at the people in front of him looking at him, Groot spoke. "Hello, Mr. Tree Man. I'm Steve Rogers." "I'm Groot." "This is Tony Stark. This is Thor." "I'm Groot." Listening to Groot, who kept introducing himself, Steve frowned. Seeing this, Thor said, "He means that he doesn't understand why he is here, when his companions and Rocket were captured and imprisoned just a second ago." Seeing Thor acting as an interpreter, Nick Fury asked, "Thor, can you understand what this tree man said?" Of course, this is one of the compulsory courses in Asgard. Hearing Thor mention Asgard, Groot's eyes lit up. "I am Groot." Faced with Groot's words, Thor's face was pale, suddenly a little embarrassed. "Damn, Peter Quill. What's wrong?" Looking at Thor's black face, Steve asked curiously, "Who is Peter Quill? What does Groot mean by that?" Faced with everyone's curious look, Thor was silent for a few seconds, then laughed. "It's okay. The theater is lit. The video will start soon. Let's watch the video first." He laughed too perfunctorily and waited until everyone sat down and prepared to watch the video. Thor then came to Groot and whispered, "You just said that the guy named Peter Quill you just met really played with 2 Asgardian ladies and then abandoned them?" "I am Groot. Damn, I'll get back for those 2 poor ladies sooner or later." In a prison on an alien planet. Achio. After sneezing, Peter Quill rubbed his nose. "What's wrong?" After seeing Peter Quill sneeze, he subconsciously looked around. Gamora, who was sitting in the corner, frowned and asked, "Are you scared?" "Scared? Don't be ridiculous. I made the prison escape plan. How could I be scared, Adab? You know, I am the famous Star-Lord." Rubbing his nose again, Peter Quill leaned against the wall again. "I just suddenly had a bad premonition, as if someone was watching me." "Forget it. Let's not talk about this. After the prison is open for exercise, we will go find Rocket Raccoon and Greg. Root perfects the escape plan. This prison can't hold me." Hearing what Peter Quill said, Gamora nodded, then closed her eyes and took a nap. Only Peter Quill still looked around with lingering fear. Why'd I have that feeling just now? Inside Lin's apartment. System, when can I see the reactions of the people in the viewing room after watching the video and listen to their discussions in the viewing room? After making the video, Lin En ate popcorn and watched the disc while waiting for everyone to give feedback after watching the video. After seeing The Truman Show, he suddenly asked curiously, "The viewing room has been upgraded to level 10, and the host can see the actions of everyone in the viewing room. Current viewing room level 8. Note, the host can choose to make himself the owner of the spoiler system and participate in it personally." Seeing the answer given by the system, Lin En was stunned. To read the exciting novels, go to Falloon Novel Network. Can I also become the owner of the spoiler system? Why didn't you tell me before? System, if I have the spoiler system, then if I watch the video I compile by myself in combination with the future, will it affect the overall trust value? Faced with Lin En's inquiry, the system directly gave a negative answer. Looking at the system giving a negative answer, Lin En nodded. Since it is still possible, I have to think about it carefully. At the same time, in the viewing room, watching the Avengers attack the Hydra base in Sokovia on the screen, Wanda's eyes flashed with complexity. Having joined the viewing room for so long, Wanda already knew what these people would do in the future. They are indeed superheroes, and they even thought that the Earth would sacrifice their lives. They also knew that they and Hydra were naturally opposed. Even the crime of killing her parents, Wanda's impression of the culprit Tony Stark has changed a little. The Hydra base in Sokovia is an evil existence in their eyes. But it is this evil existence that provides a shelter for herself and Pietro, a house that can protect her from the wind and rain, and a place where she can eat and wear warm clothes. So, she glanced at Natasha, who was watching seriously beside her. Wanda sighed slightly. Before Wanda could continue to watch the video with mixed feelings, she saw Natasha raise her hand and gently patted the back of her hand. Everyone's birth and experience are unchosen, but we can choose our own future. As a top agent, Natasha naturally noticed Wanda's complicated eyes at the first time, thinking that she and Pietro Django Maximoff were also born in Sokovia. So Natasha guessed at the first time that Wanda should in this video. The Hydra base that these Avengers members raided has something to do with it. Looking at Natasha's warm smile like a caring elder sister. Originally, Wanda, who was still a little worried, breathed a sigh of relief and continued to watch the video. In the video, the Hydra base in Sokovia was captured by the Avengers. Baron Strucker wanted to surrender, but was knocked unconscious by Steve Rogers' shield. As for Tony Stark, he came to the secret room, come out of the armor, and let Jarvis stay alert, while he looked at the documents on the table and copied the data in the computer. Just when Tony Stark was reading the documents very seriously, Wanda and Pietro suddenly appeared behind him. Seeing Pietro wanting to attack Tony Stark, Wanda raised her hand to stop him. Then he came behind Tony Stark and saw that the Scarlet magic had been released and invaded Tony Stark's mind. Seeing this scene, everyone in the theater looked at Wanda in surprise. This was the first time they had seen Wanda's ability. Even Natasha curiously asked Wanda softly, "Is this your ability?" I don't know." Faced with Natasha's question, Wanda frowned and shook her head. The video seemed very powerful, and even Jarvis, who was helping to guard, did not notice him and Pietro. "But I don't have this ability now." Seeing Wanda's confused expression, Natasha nodded gently. It seems that Wanda has not yet obtained that ability. The video continues to play. Inside the screen, "Why don't we just kill him?" Seeing that Wanda only used Scarlet magic to control Tony Stark's brain, Pietro asked in confusion, "Killing him is too easy for him. I want to torture him with the thing he fears most in his heart." After the voice fell, Tony Stark in front of him was stunned. Tony, who was inspired by Wanda's Scarlet magic to do the most fearful thing in his heart, suddenly raised his head. Then he found that the wormhole from the Battle of New York appeared above his head. A huge steel dragon opened its big mouth full of sharp teeth and pounced on him. The sudden scene frightened Tony so much that he took 2 steps back. Before he could do anything, he saw one steel dragon after another flying over him. Below those huge steel dragons, the bodies of the Avengers members fell to the ground. Hulk fell to the ground exhausted, his body twitching for the last time, and the dead Natasha stared at him with gray eyes. Clint, covered in blood, leaned against the stone wall and lost his breath, and Thor fell to the ground powerlessly and closed his eyes. Even Steve Rogers' solid shield was broken in half at this moment. Seeing this scene, Tony Stark felt dizzy and even his breathing became rapid. Subconsciously, he walked forward and squatted beside Steve Rogers, trying to feel his pulse. But he suddenly opened his eyes, and his tone was full of haste and blame. "You could have saved us." After the words fell, Steve fell to the ground holding Tony Stark's hand. His eyeballs gradually turned gray, and blood flowed from his nostrils. Looking at the people who died with their eyes open, Tony Stark's breathing immediately became rapid. The strong sense of self-blame and deep powerlessness instantly enveloped him. "Why? Don't you try your best?" The questioning voice kept echoing in Tony Stark's ears, and he subconsciously raised his head to look at the steel dragon above. "I saw countless steel dragons passing through the wormhole, and in front of the wormhole was the blue planet that he had desperately protected." Suddenly waking up from the hallucination, Tony Stark felt that his heart was about to jump out of his chest. Even Wanda, who was behind him and used scarlet magic to control him to see illusions, was stunned at this moment. She didn't expect that what Tony Stark feared most in his heart was actually this scene. Tony Stark, who woke up from the illusion, looked more serious. Looking at the Mind Scepter, his eyes became more determined. Seeing Tony Stark open his hand and put the Mind Scepter with his armor gloves, the staff was picked up. Pietro said to Wanda, "Just let him take it away like this?" Faced with Pietro's question, Wanda laughed. This is the beginning of the split of the Avengers. Seeing this scene in the video, Steve and Tony immediately looked at each other. Is this the most terrifying picture in your heart? Faced with Steve's question, Tony pondered for a few seconds, then shook his head. It should be the most terrifying thing in my heart after the battle in New York. After all, I saw alien civilizations and those powerful monsters at that time. So I am very worried that the Earth will be invaded again. Hearing Tony say this, Steve nodded. And Nick Fury said directly, Wanda in the video just now said that this is the beginning of the split of the Avengers. Perhaps this is the agreement that was always mentioned in the video we watched last time. After listening to Nick Fury's guess, everyone thought for a few seconds. I'm Groot. When Groot suddenly spoke, everyone looked at Thor. Groot said that the steel monster is from the Chitauri, but the Chitauri are one of the weakest races in the universe. Facing the gazes of the crowd, Thor translated a sentence. After hearing Thor's translation, everyone looked at each other in bewilderment. The Chitauri are the weakest race in the universe? Compared to them, isn't the Earth even weaker? Thinking of this, Tony Stark suddenly looked at Wanda. In the video, she made him see the most terrifying scene in his heart. Sensing Tony Stark's gaze towards her, Wanda glared at him, then ignored him and continued to watch the video. The video screen continued. Inside the Quinjet, have you found out about the superpower twins? Steve Rogers asked Maria Hill as he walked off the plane while holding a tablet. We have found out. The twins are named Wanda and Pietro. They became orphans at the age of 10. Their parents were killed by a bomb. Zero, please give me flower zero. Although Sokovia has nothing special, its geographical location is very important. So Sokovia has always been in turmoil. What abilities do they have? Pietro has a fast metabolism and a gigabyte of thermal balance, while Wanda has neuronal space conversion, as well as induction and mental control abilities. That means one is very fast, and the other is very strange. Watching the clip playing on the tablet, Wanda and Pietro were standing in the crowd protesting. Steve nodded. They will definitely show up again. That's right, Captain Rogers. The document says that they voluntarily joined Hydra to be experimented on by Sid Stryker, and then were given this ability by the Mind Scepter. Watching Steve Rogers walk into the elevator, Hill shrugged. It's really strange. Pressing the elevator door, looking at Hill standing outside the elevator door, Steve nodded and said, Yes, it's very strange. What kind of monster would let German scientists experiment on him during World War II? Hearing Steve say this, Hill hurriedly said, This is not a war period, Captain. At the moment the elevator door closed, Steve Rogers said seriously, But they are. In the theater. Seeing this scene, Steve subconsciously turned his head and looked at Wanda beside Natasha. There was also a hint of recognition in his eyes. 70 years ago, I defeated the invaders for victory and to end the war. To read the violent novels, go to Falun Novel Network. So let Dr. Erskine experiment on himself. But now Wanda and Pietro, aren't they the same as they were back then? After all, the video has clearly stated that Sokovia has always been in the midst of war and turmoil. Others may not understand that they volunteered to become test subjects in order to protect their homes. But I can understand their thoughts. Others do not have the same idea as Steve Rogers. Their focus is on the Mind Scepter. Hill said that Wanda and Pietro were able to have extraordinary strengths, which were given by the Mind Scepter. Can the Mind Scepter give other people extraordinary abilities? And this also shows that this group of people gathered to attack the Sokovia Hydra base after the Battle of New York. Because I saw in a previous video that the Mind Scepter was brought to Earth by Loki. Seeing that Wanda's face was a little tense, Natasha whispered a few words of comfort. The video continues to play. On the screen, although Dr. Banner was a little hesitant, Tony Stark still persuaded him to cooperate with him to put a layer of armor on the Earth. The result was the birth of Ultron. Faced with everyone's complaints and misunderstandings, Tony Stark did not refute. Until everyone was defeated by Ultron and the Avengers were torn apart. Tony Stark and Steve had a conflict while chopping wood. Tony Stark finally spoke out his thoughts. The most powerful Avenger on Earth is now torn apart, Steve Rogers said as he split the wood in front of him with an axe. Steve, you should know that Ultron wants to split us, right? Faced with Tony's words, Steve put down the axe in his hand and looked at him. I think you know, but you may not tell us. 757-inch. Banner and I are doing research and development. That may affect the team, but it may also end the team's mission. Tony Stark stepped forward and looked at Steve and said very seriously, "Isn't this our mission? Isn't our goal to end the war and go home?" Watching Tony tell his thoughts, Steve picked up a wooden stake and used both hands to tear the stake in half. Tony, whenever someone wants to win a war before the war starts, someone will sacrifice. It has always been like this. Obviously, the quarrel between Tony Stark and Steve on the screen at this moment is because of different ideas. Others were watching the quarrel quietly. Only Nick Fury looked at the backs of the two people with a serious expression. Nick Fury naturally cares about what will happen in the future. But compared to these, he cares more about the fact that Steve and Tony have different ideas. Nick Fury believes that he will form the Avengers, a team based on people with extraordinary abilities, and will be able to win no matter what enemies they encounter. But if the battle can continue to win, it will not encounter too many problems, even if the two people have different ideas. But once the battle encounters twists and turns, then this incompatible idea is likely to split the Avengers team. From getting the spoiler system to now, Nick Fury can clearly feel that Steve and Tony Stark will be one of the most important cores of the Avengers team in the future. So whether it is the choral video we see now, or the scene of signing the agreement we have seen several times before, or the Avengers will really split in the end. Perhaps the real spearhead has never been these external factors, but the most fundamental difference in ideas between the two people. Thinking of this, Nick Fury suddenly felt a headache. Steve Rogers, the American captain, seems to be easy to talk to. But in fact, he is very stubborn. Then they will definitely stick to it. And the same goes for Tony Stark. It just so happens that these two people are the core of the future Avengers team. If I can't resolve the different ideas of these two people, then even with the spoiler system, they will definitely have a fierce quarrel in the future. Thinking of this, Nick Fury leaned back in his chair and looked at the big screen. They are really two headache guys. What can I find their adhesive? Focus on the screen again. On the screen, Tony Stark is standing in front of the tractor at this moment. Please help me, don't make it talk. Hearing Nick Fury's voice, Tony Stark spread his hands. Mrs. Barton has also learned to lie. I see. He'll called you, right? I thought she was concentrating on working for the Avengers. Speaking, Tony Stark looked at Lin, who was beside Nick Fury. Man, why did you come with him? I remember you said that you hate this kind of guy who plays tricks and thinks he can control everything, but is actually always at the bottom of the pit. Faced with Tony's question, Lin threw an orange to Tony. I didn't want to participate in the Avengers. It's just that Natasha called me and said she was in a very dangerous situation and needed my help. You know, it's hard for me to refuse a friend's request. At this point, Lin looked outside. Are you arguing with Steve again? Just different ideas. That's why I don't want to join the Avengers. Coming to Tony, Lin patted him on the shoulder. I prefer to kill the enemy directly, rather than arguing about how to kill him. I'll go see Natasha. After that, Lin left the warehouse directly. 0. Seeing Lin's words on the screen, everyone in the theater was a little surprised. Ward? Lin is not a member of the Avengers. Tony turned his head and looked at Nick Fury in disbelief, frowning. What's wrong with you? You don't even accept Lin, such a powerful being, into the Avengers. Steve Rogers also looked at Nick Fury. After Tony finished speaking, Steve also said, We have seen Lin's past, and we all know what he has done for the Earth. A person as powerful and respectable as him should not be excluded from the Avengers. To read the violent novel, go to Falloon Novel Network. Steve and Tony are right. Thor, who had been watching the video without speaking, nodded. I think Lin should join the Avengers. Anyway, I hope to fight side by side with him. Seeing everyone all looked at him with suspicion, Nick Fury only felt that he had something to say. If he didn't want Lin to join the Avengers, why would he send Natasha to approach him? If he wanted to form the Avengers, he certainly couldn't miss someone like Lin. Besides, it was obvious from the video that Lin showed up to help Natasha's request. In addition, in the video that he had seen before, Natasha and Lin trusted each other. This is enough to explain the friendship between the two. So Lin didn't join the Avengers, not because he didn't invite him, but he didn't want to join. Natasha, who also understood this, said to Tony and Steve, "This is just the future trajectory of the original space." Although the original space Lin En did not join the Avengers, he maintained a very good relationship with us. So we just need to continue to be friends with Lin En. Besides, now that we have the spoiler system, we can find a way to make Lin En really join us. Speaking of this, Natasha looked at Wanda beside her and smiled. Tony, Natasha, and others have always believed that Lin should also be a member of the Avengers. After all, in the videos they have watched, whether it is the Battle of New York, the flashing incident, or the battle against the purple potato spirit, there is Lin. In addition, after they have met Lin in real life and know what kind of person Lin is, everyone has already tacitly agreed that Lin is one of them and one of their own. But now, when they see that Lin is not a member of the Avengers, everyone finds it hard to accept. What a joke! How could Lin not be one of their own? After looking at each other, Natasha and Tony decided that after watching the video this time, they would go directly to Lin. Don't want to join the Avengers? Don't even think about it. Looking back at the big screen showed the conversation between the twins Wanda Pietro and Ultron in the Sokovia Church. From Wanda and Pietro's narration, everyone knew their past and why Wanda hated Tony Stark. I am Groot. After watching the video, Groot said directly. Groot said that revenge for his parents is what he should do. Thor, who took on the translation work, said. Seeing everyone looking at him, Tony Stark immediately raised his hand and said, "Don't look at me like that, everyone." Although if I had experienced these things, I would hate myself as much as Wanda. But in fact, the missiles that fell into the hands of the Sokovia rebels were not sold by me or Stark Industries. Hearing Tony's sophistry, Wanda sneered, "Sure enough, I knew you wouldn't admit it. After all, no executioner is willing to admit it. I killed a good man." Hearing Wanda's cold voice, Natasha said, "At that time, Wanda and Pietro were only 10 years old. No matter who lost their parents at that age, they were frightened by the shell with the words Stark Industries printed on it for 2 whole days. I think everyone will be impressed by this incident." Hearing the subtext in Natasha's words, Tony was silent for a few seconds and then said to Wanda seriously, "I'm sorry, I didn't expect that the weapons made by Stark Industries would. I'm really sorry. Although I know that it's meaningless to say this now, please believe that I will give you an explanation." Hearing Tony Stark say this, Wanda laughed. "Explanation? What explanation? Do you want to—" For example, the mastermind who actually sold the weapons to the Sokovia rebels and caused this tragedy. What do you mean? Wanda frowned when she heard Tony Stark mention the mastermind. "I admit that I developed the weapon, but I, including Stark Industries, have never sold weapons to any force other than the military. I know you may not believe it, but I will give you the evidence." Seeing that Tony Stark understood her meaning and changed the order of explanation, Natasha also said, "Wanda, I will help you investigate this matter. After all, we are a family in the future." Hearing Natasha's assurance and Tony Stark's sincere eyes, Wanda hesitated for a few seconds and then nodded gently. It would be great if Lin also had a spoiler system. After all, he would definitely not deceive himself. As the progress bar on the big screen reached the end, everyone was ready for the video to end. But unexpectedly, the screen went dark and then lit up again, and the video started playing again. The sudden abnormality made everyone stunned for a while. But soon they found that the content played seemed to be a little wrong. Because the scene on the screen was not a prosperous city, it was like a wasteland world in movies and TV shows. In the video, Steve Rogers came out a tank full of green liquid and gasped for air. But looking at the pale beard and hair, it is proved that this is the old version of Captain America. Welcome back. Captain Rogers, the world needs you. Another elderly man next to him reached out and helped Steve Rogers up and then said seriously, "We must be ready to fight for this world again." Hearing the words of the old man next to him, Steve Rogers, who looked old but full of energy, said, "Peter, how many years have I been asleep?" "Almost 30 years, Captain." Hearing Peter say that it was almost 30 years, Steve Rogers took a deep breath and said, "The last time I slept for so long was during World War II. At that time, I slept for nearly 70 years. Stretching his muscles and bones, he listened to the crackling sound of bones in his body. Steve turned to look at the old man named Peter. "I didn't expect that the former Spider-Man has now become an old spider. By the way, where is Lin?" Looking at the large number of Steve Rogers everywhere, Peter Parker shrugged. There is still no news about Lin. If Lin and Wanda were still in this universe, perhaps that incident would not have happened. The video playback stopped here, and the lights in the viewing room were lit again. "Oh my God, is that me?" Looking at the lights, Peter Parker looked at everyone in surprise. The old Spider-Man Peter Parker in the video just now must be me, right? After all, I'm the only Spider-Man in the viewing room, but God, what happened to 300? We are not from the same universe. Looking at Peter Parker's surprised look, everyone was also a little strange. Indeed, Peter Parker is not from his own universe, but if he has nothing to do with the universe he is in, why does the spoiler system will you choose him? Perhaps something happened in the future that led you, Peter, to come to our universe. After hearing what Steve Rogers said, Peter Parker scratched his head. If I come to this universe, what about Aunt May and Gwen? Maybe it's not the Peter Parker in front of us. On the side, Natasha said, since Peter first came to the theater, S.H.I.E.L.D. has secretly investigated whether there is someone named Peter Parker in our universe. And according to the screening, the only child who meets the conditions of Peter Parker, who is still in New York and has a guardian named May, is a child in Queens. But that child is only 11 years old. If the old Spider-Man in the video is that child, then according to the appearance of the old Spider-Man, the time is at least 50 years later. To read the violent novel, go to Falun Novel Network. At this point, Natasha looked at Steve. If the time is really 50 years later, then maybe something happened to you 20 years later which caused you to continue sleeping for 30 years. Now, the question facing everyone in the theater is how to solve Wanda's problem. The Hydra base in Sokovia must be destroyed. But Wanda and Pietro live there after all, and it is obvious that Wanda will also be a member of the Avengers in the future, so destroying the Sokovia Hydra and saving Wanda and Pietro must take their ideas into consideration. The most important thing is that Wanda and Pietro's abilities are given by the Mind Scepter. But Loki has not brought the Mind Scepter to Earth yet. Once these people eliminate Baron Strucker and Citriker in advance, can Wanda and Pietro still get this ability? Listening to the discussion, Thor, who was watching Groot leave, suddenly said, "No matter how long you discuss, you can't come to any conclusion. Why not ask Wanda what she thinks and what Lin thinks about this matter? After all, the only person who really owns the Infinity Stones is Lin. Have you forgotten his necklace?" Seeing everyone looking at him, Thor shrugged. Although the Cosmic Cube has been hidden by S.H.I.E.L.D., there has been no breakthrough in so many years. I don't think S.H.I.E.L.D. understands the Cosmic Cube, Zeus Cube, but Lin is different. He is the messenger of Nemesis, the goddess of vengeance, and he also has the Ego Gem. Then he must know more about the Infinity Gems than we do. Speaking of this, Thor frowned, but I asked my father after watching the video last time. He knows 6 Infinity Gems, but he has never heard of Lin's Ego Gem. It's hard to imagine that there is something my father doesn't know. Hearing what Thor said, everyone reacted immediately. Yes, we have to ask Lin about the specific situation. And even if we want to attack the Hydra base in Sokovia, we have to pull Lin along. The original Lin did not join the Avengers. But this time, they must pull Lin, Indiana. What's more, they're going to save Wanda. Maybe the two will get together in advance because of this. Thinking of this, Natasha looked at Wanda and asked with a smile, "Wanda, if we are going to attack the Hydra base in Sokovia, will you object?" Faced with Natasha's question, Wanda was silent for a moment. Seeing that Wanda didn't speak, Natasha, as a top agent, instantly understood Wanda's concerns. "Wanda, you will obviously be a member of the Avengers in the future, and you will also be Lin's girlfriend and a member of our big family. Although the timeline is a bit early now, we very much welcome you and Pietro to join this unformed big family in advance." After Natasha's voice fell, Tony Stark on the side also said, "From the moment I entered the viewing room with the spoiler system and knew the Avengers, I have been preparing for the Avengers. Avengers base. Construction started on Staten Island last year, and the Avengers base is almost complete. Once all kinds of instruments and furniture are delivered, you can move in. Wanda, I know you have hatred for me, but I said I would give you a satisfactory explanation. So, aren't you afraid that I will falsify the answer sheet I give you?" Listening to the subtext of Tony Stark and Natasha's words, Wanda thought for a few seconds, then nodded and said, "I have no objection. In fact, since the human trafficking organization Sokovia was defeated last year, there are fewer and fewer people that Citric can use for experiments. In fact, I know that as the number of experimental subjects decreases, he will soon target the locals of Sokovia or even the members of Hydra. Maybe just like what we saw on the screen, Pietro and I will become one of the experimental subjects." Seeing that Wanda did not object, Steve Rogers immediately clapped his hands. "Then it's settled. Thor, when can you return to Earth? This is the first time the Avengers have assembled. We need to go through training and get familiar with each other's fighting methods." Faced with Captain America's question, Thor immediately said, "Soon, although the Rainbow Bridge has not yet been repaired, I can ask my father to use his divine power to send me to Earth. I'll ask Hill to invite Dr. Banner again." Nick Fury on the side also spoke up. "Natasha and I will go find Lin. This time, even if we have to tie her up, we will tie her up. It's a good opportunity to ask about the Infinity Stones." Tony Stark also spoke up at this time. "Then it's settled." Seeing that everyone was ready, Steve Rogers said seriously, "Gather at the Avengers base in Staten Island tomorrow afternoon to discuss when to officially attack the Sokovia Hydra base." Seeing the actions of the Avengers members in the theater, Peter Parker, who had been silent, felt his blood boiling and wanted to participate immediately. Unfortunately, he did not belong to their universe. To read the exciting novels, go to Falun Novel Network. So many like-minded family members, it's really enviable. After leaving Wanda's contact information, Natasha left the theater with everyone. Once Natasha will notify Wanda immediately when to attack the Sokovia Hydra base. At the same time, in Lin's apartment, the overall trust of the spoiler system owner exceeds 90%, and the host will receive a reward. Resurrection Spirit Liquid. Resurrection Spirit Liquid. It has the effect of resurrecting the dead. If the host dies, as long as the body is not fatally damaged and the soul has not dissipated, a drop of Resurrection Spirit Liquid can revive the host. Note, a bottle of Resurrection Spirit Liquid can be divided into 10 drops. Each drop is enough for one resurrection. Note 2. Resurrection Spiritual Liquid can only be used once by each person, except the host. Note 3. Do not drink it in advance, otherwise it will be invalid. Looking at the rewards that the system exploded, Lin En's eyes flashed with joy. Although no new skills were given directly this time, better items were given. Resurrection Spiritual Liquid. I can use the Resurrection Spiritual Liquid to save a dead person. But at the same time, I can also use it for myself, because there is no limit to myself, so theoretically now I have 10 lives. Looking at the blue bottle in his hand, Lin En immediately opened the system and put it in the system storage space. Such a precious thing must be kept well by myself. If the bottle is accidentally broken or lost, it will definitely be a huge loss. After doing all this, Lin En breathed a sigh of relief and walked out of the apartment. I don't know why, but recently, Lin En always felt that someone was watching him. But he didn't find the person watching him. So, Lin En planned to set a trap to catch the guy watching him. The next morning, in the living room of Lin's apartment. Generally speaking, the Infinity Stones cannot directly give a person special abilities. Facing Tony Stark and Natasha, who came together, Lin said, "If what you said really happened, then I think it should be that the twins themselves have extraordinary abilities. And the role of the Infinity Stones should only stimulate, or in other words, awaken them to this ability." Lin knew who the two people were asking, so he gave a straightforward answer. After all, the Mind Stone only allowed Wanda and Pietro to stimulate their original abilities. It's not like Carol Danvers. In fact, this ability had already been revealed when Wanda was 10 years old. The reason why the shell did not explode was because Wanda subconsciously modified reality. Hearing Lin's explanation, Natasha and Tony Stark breathed a sigh of relief. So, there's no need to wait for the Battle of New York to end, and the Mind Scepter will be taken to Sokovia by Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. After Wanda Pietro awakens his ability, the Avengers will attack. Lin, do you know the Avengers? After looking at each other with Tony, Natasha asked with a smile. Without waiting for Lin to speak, Natasha continued. The concept of the Avengers was first proposed by Nick 380 Fury. This is a team composed of people with extraordinary abilities. Its purpose is to protect the world and fight against all kinds of conspirators or aliens who try to endanger and control the world. At present, this team is being formed. The members temporarily include me, Tony, Steve, Dr. Bruce Banner, Thor, the God of Thunder from Asgard, and Clint Barton. Lin, you are very strong and have a heart of justice. So, we unanimously decided to invite you to join the Avengers team. Faced with Natasha's invitation, Lin thought for a few seconds, then shook his head and refused. This Avengers alliance has enough people like you, so I'll forget it. I believe you have enough ability to protect the world. Natasha and Tony Stark were not surprised to hear Lin's refusal. If they hadn't obtained the original space of the spoiler system, they would have definitely invited Lin in, but Lin En didn't join. So Lin En's refusal this time was also within their control. Why? Looking at Lin En, Tony Stark asked curiously, "Joining the Avengers will neither affect your studies nor your personal life. Isn't it good for us to form a team to protect the world together?" Faced with Tony's curiosity, Lin En picked up the teacup and took a sip. "I just don't like to join any team." "Oh, come on. Everyone can hear your words are perfunctory." Spreading his hands and looking at Lin, Tony Stark said seriously, "Don't use such perfunctory reasons to us. After all, we are friends." Seeing the serious expressions of Tony and Natasha, Lin thought for a few seconds and said, "The original intention of this team must be good, but I don't want to see the team eventually break up." Hearing Lin's words, Natasha and Tony Stark looked at each other. In the theater, they saw the scene of the split of the Avengers family. But now that the Avengers are just about to be formed and nothing has happened yet, can Lin be sure of this? This look is too far-sighted. Why do you say that? Looking at Lin En, Natasha asked seriously. It's very simple, because the original purpose of forming a team must be good, and at this time, everyone will definitely work hard for the goal. But as time goes by, when the team has a certain degree of popularity or strength, it will inevitably face various practical problems. Tony, Natasha, personal conflict in the team are actually nothing. What can really make a team split or even break up is often different ideas. And it happens that as long as you are a person, you will definitely have your own ideas. At this point, Lin En put down the teacup. The collision of ideas is often the beginning of internal fighting. Let's not talk about this. When the Avengers are known to everyone, what do you think will happen? Just like Natasha said, the Avengers team is composed of many vigilantes with extraordinary abilities. But have you ever considered that the authorities will let a vigilante with such a powerful team go? Will the World Security Council let him act freely? You know, if the person in power can control the Avengers, it means he has a knife that can fight for power and profit. Don't ever say that Nick Fury will guarantee the independence and legality of the Avengers. Looking at the two, Lin leaned on the sofa and smiled. When the pressure from the whole world comes to him, do you think he can bear it? Or can his successor bear this pressure? Seeing Lin peeling off the bloody reality, Natasha and Tony Stark's expressions were a little solemn for a moment. Lin was thinking too far ahead. As soon as there was a sign of the Avengers, he could think of the future growth and destruction. But it must be admitted that what Lin said was absolutely right. When the Avengers really became famous and saved the world, whether it was the people in power or the World Security Council, they would definitely try their best to make the Avengers team work for them. Agreement. Just as Natasha was lost in thought, Tony Stark suddenly, he said, "Remember the agreement we saw that Steve and I had to sign? Maybe that was the beginning of the split of the Avengers." Hearing Tony's reminder, Natasha's eyes sternly and then nodded solemnly. Agreement? What agreement? Looking at the two of them pretending to be ignorant, Lin asked curiously, "Does Nick Fury want you to sign an agreement? To read the violent novel, go to Faloo Novel Network." Nothing. Facing Lin's inquiring eyes, Natasha waved her hand. "What you said does make sense, Lin. You think further than any of us." As she said that, Natasha gently kicked Tony Stark under the table. But the more this happened, the more determined the two people were to pull Lin into the Avengers. Oh my God, a 20-year-old young man can see so far. The ability to see the big picture from the small details is not something that ordinary people can have. Compared to Lin En's strength, his knowledge can completely serve as the brain of the Avengers. And maybe, in the future, the decisive factor to avoid the split of the Avengers is Lin En. Thinking of this, Natasha looked at Lin En with even more fiery eyes. This made Lin En feel a little. I always felt that Natasha wanted to eat me. At 10 a.m., inside the Avengers base on Staten Island, looking at the villa-like residences in front of him, as well as the largest building among the villas, Lin said to Tony Stark speechlessly, "Even if you and Natasha drag me here, I don't want to join the Avengers." That's right. After listening to Lin's analysis, Natasha and Tony Stark looked at each other. Then one of them took Lin's arm and took him to the car without saying anything. Faced with the actions of these two bandits, Lin was a little amused. After all, Tony could do such a thing. Lin was not surprised at all. But why are you still joining in the fun, Black Widow? If you can't argue, just tie him up and force him to join. Do you see that villa? Pointing to the white villa in the middle, Tony Stark tempted. A 500-square-meter villa with a garden, man. As long as you are willing to join us, this villa will be yours. Steve, Natasha, and others will also live in other villas. I spent a huge amount of money to build this villa. The interior decoration will definitely satisfy you. And do you see this largest building? There are not only training rooms, lounges, restaurants, conference rooms, multifunctional medical rooms, etc. Everything here is even automated, allowing you to enjoy everything without leaving home. And you can also observe every corner of New York. Let's put it this way. As long as there is a surveillance site in New York, we can find out whatever happens in the first place. Hearing Tony's proud praise, Lin En suddenly reacted, asked, "So, the city that the Avengers mainly protect is only New York?" Hearing Lin's deliberate nitpicking, Tony was a little speechless for a moment, and then rolled his eyes and said, "Do you think it's easy to get the surveillance data of all European and American countries, or even the whole world? Man, I got the surveillance data of various intersections, subways, and ports in New York because I asked S.H.I.E.L.D. for authorization. But man, these are not the point. The point is that you don't think. I don't think there is any difference between the apartment and the villa I live in. After all, a bed is enough for sleeping in a residence of dozens of square meters and hundreds of square meters. Even after death, whether it is a luxurious urn or a simple wooden box, it's the same." Hearing what Lin said, Tony Stark pursed his lips and then looked at Natasha. Damn it, I can't argue with this guy at all. Seeing Tony's look of seeking help, Natasha smiled. Many things cannot be forced, and the reason why she and Tony brought Lin in here. Originally, they planned to use subtle means to make him gradually identify with the Avengers. Lin En, today is the first gathering of the Avengers, so we want you to witness it. Whether you want to join the Avengers or not, I hope you can visit. Lin nodded after hearing what Natasha said. Following the two to the conference room, he saw Clint and Thor making a bet, and Steve Rogers comforted Dr. Banner. When he saw Natasha and Tony bringing Lin in, Steve stood up with a smile. Seeing Steve coming over, Natasha shrugged and gave Steve a look. After receiving the look from Black Widow, Steve smiled and stretched out his hand to Lin and said, "Welcome to the Avengers base." "Thank you." Looking at Steve's outstretched hand, Lin also shook it with him. For some reason, I always felt that except for Dr. Banner and Clint, everyone else present was a little excited. "Sit down first." After letting Lin sit on the chair, Steve immediately came to the round table and pulled down a curtain. As the slides appeared on the curtain, an ancient castle appeared in front of everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the picture taken by the Eastern European Shield. According to the investigation, this castle is the Sokovia Hydra Al-Qaeda. The leader of this Hydra Al-Qaeda is Baron Strucker, and his subordinate Dr. Citric is related to the human trafficking organization we eliminated last year. This is our first goal after the establishment of the Avengers, and everyone, this mission can only succeed and cannot fail. Next, let's discuss the deployment and details of this battle. After hearing Steve's words, Lin immediately felt like he was on a pirate ship. To read the exciting novels, go to Falloon Novel Network. Turning his head to look at Tony Stark, he whispered, "Didn't you tell me to come over for a visit? I've been here for less than 5 minutes, and I'm going to join the battle." "Zero, please give me flowers." Faced with Lin's question, Tony Stark coughed twice. Don't disturb the captain's deployment. We have to respect Captain Rogers." Looking at Tony, trying to put on a natural expression, Lin looked at Natasha on the right speechlessly. Natasha raised her lips when facing Lin's gaze, but she just didn't look at Lin. Seeing this scene, Lin instantly understood the intentions of these two people. Well, they actually played this trick just when Lin was about to get up and leave after Steve Rogers finished speaking. The voice of the system suddenly sounded in his ears. Side quest. Save Wanda Django Maximoff and Pietro Django Maximoff. Task introduction. Because you joined forces with half of the Avengers plus Punisher and Daredevil to destroy the Eastern European human trafficking organization last year, it indirectly led to the lack of key consumables for Citric's human experiments. Citric, who lost the consumables, decided to start from the Sokovian people. Select the experimental consumables from the young people inside Hydra. Due to your intervention, the twins Wanda and Pietro are in a very dangerous situation. To prevent the twins from becoming experimental consumables, please rescue them. Task validity, 72 hours. Task reward, randomly increase the upper limit of a skill. Task failure penalty, none. Task countdown begins. Hearing that the system suddenly issued a side quest, Lin En frowned slightly. I didn't expect that after he and Natasha killed the Blood Parrot gang and the forces behind it last year, the chain reaction caused by it actually affected Wanda and Pietro. Lin En was not sure if Wanda and Pietro participated in Citric's experiment in advance. What kind of catastrophic consequences would be caused without the Mind Scepter? So, it seems that I must participate in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s mission to attack the Sokovia Hydra base this time. Thinking of this, Lin adjusted his sitting position and continued to listen to Steve's description of the Sokovia base's deployment, firepower, and personnel deployment. It must be said that as a person who has actually participated in the war, Steve Rogers' command is still quite good. On the Quinjet. "Hey, Dr. Banner, are you nervous?" Looking at Bruce Banner, who was sitting next to him, Tony Stark asked jokingly, "I've seen the video of you turning into a big green guy before. I have to say, I quite admire that big guy." Facing Tony's curious eyes, Banner pursed his lips and then said, "Thank you. What big green guy? Is he very strong?" Thor came over and asked curiously, "How about comparing with me? But if nothing unexpected happens, I should be the most powerful superhero in the Avengers." You? Tony shrugged his shoulders at Thor's claim to be the most powerful superhero in the Avengers. If you want to compete for the strongest in the Avengers, you have to solve the problem that the hammer does not belong to you alone. Tony's words made the smile on Thor's face a little stiff. Damn it, I actually 943 forgot that Steve could also pick up the hammer. Tony, looking at Tony helplessly, Steve shook his head. This is the first time the Avengers gather to fight. So can you not make trouble? Okay, my bad. Seeing Thor staring at him, Tony Stark spread his hands. But soon he blinked at Thor again. In addition to Hulk, you have to defeat our Judge Lin. Damn, I hate you, mouth. Thor turned his head with a huff and decided not to pay attention to Tony Stark today. In the cab, listening to the banter and gossip of several people in the cabin, Natasha raised her lips and then said to the co-pilot Lin, Lin, the task of saving the twins of Wanda Pietro is left to you. After all, your magic is very convenient. Okay. Nodding, Lin looked at the judge mask in his hand. But I'm still not ready to join the Avengers. I know, it doesn't matter. Seeing that the Quinjet was about to enter the battle site, Natasha canceled the stealth system. But no matter what you think, at least in our hearts, you are already a member of the team. At the same time, in a wooden house far away from the crowd in the suburbs of New York, Ward sent. After hearing Samalo's report, Stephen Strange, who was wearing a mask on half of his face, looked surprised. You mean the Avengers assembled to attack the Hydra base in Sokovia? Yes, Master. Seeing the Master's surprised face, Samalo hurriedly said, Master, you asked me to secretly monitor Lin, and then I found out that Tony Stark and Natasha Romanoff found Lin and took him to the Avengers base in Staten Island. Early this morning, the Avengers members flew to Sokovia with Lin, and their target was definitely that Hydra base castle. After listening to Samalo's explanation, Stephen Strange's eyes were full of surprise. You mean, the Avengers have been established now? And the Avengers base is not the Stark Industrial Building, but is built on Staten Island. Yes, Master. How is this possible? Listening to Samalo's report, Stephen Strange's face was full of doubt. The Battle of New York has not yet begun. How can the Avengers team be established now? Besides, Wanda and Pietro have not yet accepted the experiment of the Mind Scepter. After thinking for a few seconds, Stephen Strange suddenly looked at Samalo. Is there any action at the Magic Temple in New York? Faced with Strange's inquiry, Samalo said helplessly, Master, the powerful Supreme Sorcerer is still alive. The few men I brought from the Hell Dimension have not waited to secretly spy on the temple. It was solved by the powerful Supreme Sorcerer with a wave of his hand. Waste didn't I tell you to use? Forget it. Waving his hand, Strange said, Samalo, you go to Sokovia and find out what's going on. Remember, don't expose yourself. No problem, Master. To read the exciting novels, go to Falun Novel Network. Nodding, Samalo patted his chest and said, Don't worry, I am the best at hiding in the Hell Dimension. As long as I don't want to, then the Avengers will not be able to find me. Looking at Samalo's solemn promise, Strange frowned and said, Don't be careless. What happened in this universe is too weird. Then I'll go first, Master. Bowed and saluted, and Samalo immediately disappeared in front of Strange. Standing by the window, looking at the sunny scenery outside, Stephen Strange's eyes were full of solemnity. Avengers. Timeline. It seems that this universe is not as simple as I thought. At the same time, inside the Hydra base in Sokovia, Wanda, what's the matter with calling me here in such a hurry? Coming to Wanda's room, Pietro asked curiously Zero. From now on, Pietro, you must stay in my room and are not allowed to leave. Also, no matter who knocks on the door and tells us to evacuate, we cannot open the door. While saying this, Wanda locked the door neatly. Seeing Wanda's serious face, Pietro was stunned for a moment, then asked uncertainly, Wanda, is something going to happen soon? Don't worry about it. There are some things I can't tell you for the time being. Looking at Pietro's serious questioning, Wanda shook her head. I just want to protect my brother and me, so that we can survive. Hearing Wanda say this, Pietro subconsciously took out a pistol from his waist. Okay, although I don't know what danger will come next. But before I die, Wanda, no one can hurt you. This is my promise as a brother. Come on, I'm the sister. Taking the pistol from Pietro's hand, Wanda turned on the safety. You just hide behind me when the time comes. Hee hee, I was born 12 minutes earlier than you. Pietro shrugged and said after taking out another pistol from his waist and turning on the safety. Hearing what Pietro said, Wanda glared at him, then took out her mobile phone, edited the text message, and sent it out. Inside the Quinjet fighter. After receiving Wanda's text message on March 8th, Natasha immediately said, Wanda and Pietro have already hidden. Everyone, let's follow Captain Rogers' plan. No problem. Walking down from the Quinjet, Tony Stark controlled the armor and flew to the castle first. Thor and others also took their weapons and prepared to start fighting as planned. So, you're not going to tell me how you know about Wanda and Pietro? Putting on the judge mask, Lin turned his head and looked at Natasha. Well, you will know later. Avengers' secrets? That's not the case. Believe me, Lin, if you are selected in the future, you will also know these things. Looking at the moment when a mask was put on, Lin became cold and fierce. Natasha patted Lin's arm and then ran to the battlefield with a pistol. Boom! Thor's hammer hit Captain America's shield, and the powerful shock wave directly blew away the tank and a team of Hydra soldiers in front of him. I think this is unfair. You can pick up my hammer, but I can't use your shield. Seeing the elite Hydra soldiers in front being eliminated, Thor spread his hands and said to Steve, Then after the battle, I will teach you how to use the shield. Faced with Steve's proposal, Thor shook his head. Forget it, compared to defense, I prefer offense. Hey, now is not the time for you two to chat. Throwing the electrode to paralyze the two Hydra soldiers, Natasha raised her gun and shot them without hesitation. Listening to the conversation between the two people in the headset, Natasha hid behind a tree and shot while saying, Swish! An arrow flew to Natasha's back and nailed to a tree. The next second, the arrow exploded. Several Hydra soldiers who wanted to sneak attack Natasha were directly submerged by the explosion. Pay more attention to your back during the battle. Also, Natasha, I always feel that you seem to know a lot and are hiding a lot of things from me. Pick up the 3 arrows again and put them on the bow, Clint Barton said. You think too much, Clint. Looking at the Hulk running over, Natasha pointed to the bunker in front. Hey, big guy, that place is up to you. Smash it hard. Looking at Natasha, pointing to the bunker that kept shooting at this side. Hulk clenched his fist and grinned, then jumped high and smashed heavily in the direction of the bunker. Boom! Seeing Hulk destroy the bunker that was being strafed by machine guns in one go, Natasha exclaimed, letting Hulk join the Avengers. I think it is the wisest choice for Fury. Also, Clint, do you want to know the answer? Maybe you will know it later. Listening to Natasha's perfunctory answer, Hawkeye fired 3 explosive arrows in a row. Watching the explosive arrows kill the team coming to support from the front, Clint Barton shrugged. I think the question Lin asked when he got off the plane is what I want to ask. It seems that Lin and I should have a lot of common topics to talk about. Outside the Hydra castle. Oh damn, the armor hit the energy shield of the castle, and Tony Stark subconsciously cursed. Hey Tony, stop swearing. Steve just finished saying this subconsciously and immediately found something wrong. Oh, exactly the same. Wow, stop swearing, Captain. I thought you would change. He pressed the brake on the motorcycle and used inertia to throw the motorcycle out and smash the tank in front of him. Looking at the explosion scene in front of him, Steve shook his head and said, This is a subconscious reminder, but this shows that what we see, how accurate is it? X2. Listening to the conversation between Tony and Steve in the headset, Lin and Clint asked questions at the same time. It's just that one of them pretended not to know what happened, even though he knew it. And the other one really didn't know. These are not important for now, Lin. I will get rid of the energy defense mechanism now. You find a way to send Wanda and Pietro to the Quinjet. No problem. Seeing Tony change the subject, Lin did not continue to ask. When the energy defense mechanism in front of him was broken, Lin rushed directly into the castle. Seeing Lin rushing into the castle, the Hydra soldiers immediately raised their guns and kept shooting at Lin. Dense bullets hit the magic shield and kept falling. The next second, two magic chains flew out of the void and entangled dozens of Hydra soldiers. Dozens of soldiers tied up by the two chains kept struggling, but the next second they were mercilessly slammed into the wall next to them. With a series of click and click sounds, the golden magic directly enveloped these people. 87. Looking at the dead Hydra soldiers, they could be transformed into the 87th skeleton warrior. Lin followed the signal and headed straight for the direction where Wanda and Pietro were. Inside the castle. Damn it, Chief. Our base is finished. Looking at Lin walking in the castle, he was like the god of death, constantly reaping the lives of those soldiers. In addition to those unheard of magic, his eyes could shoot out heat vision like Superman to penetrate the soldiers' shields. Citrical immediately said to Baron Strucker in panic. The moment I saw them coming, I knew we were finished. Take off his glasses and straighten his suit. So I'm ready. Are you ready to die in battle? Chief, long live Hydra. Die in battle, ass. Glazing at Citricer unhappily, Baron Strucker walked out and said, Be prepared to surrender. Although Alexander Pierce is an idiot, he didn't even inform us of this matter. To read the novel, go to Falun Novel Network. But at least as long as this idiot is still alive, even if we are caught, we still have hope of survival. Died in battle? Humph. I won't repeat the mistakes of Red Skull, John Schmidt 70 years ago. Seeing Baron Strucker walking out righteously while preparing to surrender. Strucker was stunned for a few seconds, then nodded in sudden realization. That's right. As long as Alexander Pierce is still alive, there is still hope for everything. Although Hydra has split, they have become several factions, but they are still our own people, right? Just about to follow Stark to the door. But the next second, he saw that his leader had not waited to surrender, and his head was blown into a watermelon by the hot eyes of Lin En wearing a mask. Seeing this 813 scene, Citricer knelt on the ground without hesitation and raised his hands. I surrender. I am just a scientist. I have no weapons. After saying that, as if afraid of Lin En's action, Citricer lay on the ground with his hands above his head, indicating that he was not a threat. Seeing this scene, Lin En chuckled lightly. At the same time, in Wanda's room, listening to the continuous bursts of fierce gunfire outside, Pietro clenched the gun in his hand and stared at the door. If someone breaks in and wants to harm Wanda, Pietro swears that he will shoot. Relax, Pietro. Looking at Pietro's focused look, Wanda comforted him. I'm not nervous. After all, I've seen all kinds of scenes. Turning his head and try to squeeze out a smile to comfort Wanda, Pietro was just about to say something. The next second, the door was opened by Lin. Don't move. The moment Pietro saw Lin rushing in, he immediately raised his pistol. Just as he was about to tell Lin to get out and not hurt Wanda, he saw Wanda directly press his pistol. One of us, Pietro. After saying that, Wanda looked at the tall and cold Lin in front of her, and then the corners of her mouth rose. Finally, I saw you in person. My future boyfriend. Natasha asked you to save me and Pietro, didn't she? Looking at Lin, who was wearing a mask, Wanda asked with a smile. Lin didn't have a spoiler system, so Wanda naturally couldn't say that she knew Lin. Having communicated with Natasha in the theater, Wanda knew how she should treat Lin. That's right. With a clear and steady voice, Lin looked at Natasha and Pietro and said, You two should leave here with me first. Hearing Lin's voice, Wanda smiled and nodded. Only Pietro looked at Wanda in confusion. Let's talk about it after we get out. Seeing Pietro's puzzled look, Wanda said casually. Then she said to Lin, How do we leave? Simple. Hearing the bursts of gunfire coming from the corridor, she knew that Tony and his men had broken in. Lin casually opened the portal. Oh my God! Seeing such a magical scene, Pietro was instantly surprised. This masked guy just waved his hand, and then a glowing portal appeared in the bedroom. Seeing Lin walk out of the portal first, Wanda said to Pietro, Don't stand there stupidly. Follow me. After that, Wanda also passed through the portal, following Wanda through the portal with a surprised look on his face. The feeling of being in Wanda's bedroom in the last second and appearing in the wild in the next second made Pietro full of surprise. Following Lin to the Quinjet, seeing two people coming up, Lin said to Natasha through the headset, "The people have been safely received." Received? Hearing Lin's words in the headset, Natasha said to Steve, "Captain, Lin has received Wanda and Pietro. Let's make a quick decision." "Okay." Taking back the throne shield, Steve said to Thor, "Thor, proceed according to the plan." Following Steve's order, Thor flew into the air with his hammer, and then summoned a huge lightning bolt to strike directly forward. Inside the Quinjet, faced with Wanda's peak and Pietro's vigilant and curious eyes, Lin sat in the chair and said nothing, just waiting for the other members of the Avengers to come back. The feeling of being spied on came back again in an instant. Lin En did not act rashly after realizing that someone was secretly watching him. After all, Wanda and Pietro were just ordinary people, and the Avengers had not returned yet. If he chased the peeper, if he was tricked into leaving the mountain, Wanda and Pietro would be in trouble. After waiting for more than half an hour, all the Avengers came back. Seeing Steve Rogers coming back with Citric, Lin En stood up and said, "You are finally back." "Dude, wait, too late." Hearing what Lin said, Tony Stark was about to speak, but he saw Lin jump directly from the Quinjet. "You go back to New York first. I have something to deal with." After the voice fell, Lin disappeared in front of everyone. "Huh." Seeing Lin leave very coldly, Tony Stark blinked. Then he said to Natasha, "Did our boiling frog in warm water plan fail?" "It shouldn't be." Lin was murderous before he left. He must have discovered something. But Lin didn't ask us to help, which means he can handle it. After that, Natasha came to Wanda, finally met in reality. "Wanda, to read the exciting novels, go to Falun Novel Network. In a dense forest. It's just like the Master Guest." The Avengers' main goal this time is Wanda and Pietro. Eliminating Hydra is just a side job. Watching the Quinjet fighter take off, Samalo muttered to himself. Just as Samalo was about to leave, a cold and murderous voice sounded behind him. "So, who is the master you serve?" Hearing the murderous voice behind him, Samalo turned around immediately. When he saw clearly that the person behind him was Lin En wearing a mask, Samalo was surprised for a few seconds. Then he patted his head. "Ah, I have been with the Master for so long, and I have ignored the most basic, low-level undead in the Hell Dimension." As the words fell, a faint green light emanated from Samoro's body. As the light spread to the surroundings, several unconscious undead soon appeared around him. "It's all my fault for being careless. I thought these were just undead whose spiritual senses had not yet dissipated. I completely forgot that you were also a psychic. These undead should be surveillance traps deliberately set up by you after you noticed my spying. It seems that what the Master said is right. Sure enough, the Avengers on this timeline are simply not comparable to you." While speaking, Samalo, who was originally hunched over like an 80 to 90-year-old man, slowly straightened up. His aura instantly reached its peak. Seeing this, Lin En didn't say anything more. Two undead chains cut through the void and attacked Samalo directly. Realizing that Lin En wanted to capture him alive, Samalo let out a chuckle. Instantly, the hellfire enveloped his body to block the restraint of the undead chains. "Your abilities are like my last master. He used undead chains to hang me for 3 whole years before I surrendered." As soon as the words fell, countless ghost claws emitting black air appeared around Lin En and grabbed Lin En. Just when these ghost claws wrapped in black air were about to touch Lin En, the magic cutting appeared, and the golden lines visible to the naked eye directly chopped these ghost claws into pieces fall. "You are from the Hell Dimension." From the abilities he displayed, Lin En understood his identity in an instant. Without any extra nonsense, Lin En flashed to his side, and the heat vision released by his eyes attacked Samalo's head without hesitation. Feeling the huge energy of the heat vision, Samalo's expression tightened, and a shield surrounded by black mist immediately rose in front of him. The moment the heat vision hit the shield, a series of crackling and cracking sounds continued to sound. How is this possible? Looking at the cracks on the shield, Samalo immediately wanted to retreat in fright. Bang! The shield exploded in an instant, and the heat vision directly penetrated Samalo's head. The head was penetrated by the heat vision, and Samalo's body twitched twice and then fell straight from the air to the ground. The undead chains sprang out of the void again, and before Samalo's corpse fell to the ground, he was tied up and brought to Lin En. Don't pretend. The guy from the Hell Dimension won't be killed so easily. Hearing Lin En's words, Samalo, who had been dead, slowly opened his eyes, and his gray-white pupils also had a little more vitality. So, I hate dealing with you, the real powerful psychics, because you know too much about the creatures in our Hell Dimension. Under Lin En's eye of judgment, any enemy will be surrounded by the most fearful things in their hearts, and thus tell the answer Lin En wants. For creatures in the Hell Dimension, the eye of judgment can even annihilate their souls. However, Lin En underestimated the hell creature named Samalo in front of him. Or rather, Lin En underestimated the so-called master behind him. The master had already placed a soul ban on Samalo. Once Samalo said the name of the master, then his soul will automatically be annihilated. But it is not useless. At least, Lin En learned from Samalo, a creature in the Hell Dimension, that the master behind him sent him to monitor him, because he is really the anchor of this universe. After hearing this news, Lin En was also a little surprised. You must know that in the video that the Avengers members in the theater had seen, the concept that he was the anchor was compiled by himself. But I didn't expect it to come true now. No wonder I wasn't arrested by the Time Management Bureau when I traveled to this world, nor was I discovered and expelled by Ancient One. So the fake identity I compiled for myself actually came true? In fact, you were not the anchor of this universe at the beginning. Facing the threat of the Eye of Judgment, Samalo's imprisoned soul slumped on the ground 710. But I don't know what happened later. You actually became the anchor of this universe. If the Master can crack the reason, then he can save his universe. Speaking of this, Samalo opened his mouth, staring at Lin En with his big mouth full of sharp teeth, his eyes full of greed. You are the anchor of the 7th universe we have encountered. After the first 6 were killed by the Master, they were all fed to me. I really want to taste your... Before the hell creature in front of him finished speaking, Lin En's pupils instantly turned golden. The next second, the Eye of Judgment was activated, and in the blink of an eye, Samalo's soul began to burn violently. Bursts of painful roars resounded throughout the dense forest, but Lin En did not have any sympathy. I have almost understood what I want to know, so there is no need to keep this man-eating Hell Dimension creature. Watching Samalo's soul burn out, Lin En turned around and opened the portal, and then returned to New York. Not long after Lin En left the place, the originally calm space suddenly rippled. Then a guy with a huge head and slender limbs, stepping on a flying vehicle, appeared here. TSK. Looking at the body of Samalo on the ground being burned to ashes, the instrument on Big Head Murdoch's wrist emitted bursts of green light. The surrounding woods were blown by strong winds, making the leaves rustle. Very quick, Samalo, who was completely killed by Lin En, is resurrected again. The resurrected Samalo sat on the ground and breathed a sigh of relief, then looked at the big-headed Murdoch and said, "If you could have come earlier, I wouldn't have suffered so much torture." Facing Samalo's complaints, Murdoch laughed and said, "Aren't you known as the strongest creature under the Lord of the Hell Dimension? A judge whose strength has not yet reached the peak can easily kill you." Facing Murdoch's ridicule, Samalo glared at him. "You are a guy who relies on technology. You know nothing. Lin En's weird abilities are too restrained for us creatures of the Hell Dimension. I doubt that Lin En didn't use those more powerful undead magics in front of me." At this point, Samalo stood up from the ground. "But I have revealed to Lin En what the Master asked for. Maybe Lin En will find out soon. The mastermind who put a soul restriction on me and made me call the Master is Dr. Strange Black. By the way, what is the Master's plan? Didn't he promise Dr. Strange Black that if he could? What do you know? The Master is playing a big game. Glancing at Samalo, the creature from the Hell Dimension, with contempt, Strange, who's been eroded by darkness, is just a chess piece on the chessboard. Just like those poor guys whose memories were wiped out in the Time Management Bureau, and Thanos who invaded the Time Management Bureau. These are just part of the Master's plan. By the way, the news of your death has been known to Black Strange. So next, you have more important things to do. Loki and Sylvie, these two guys, actually persuaded Wanda, who has mastered chaos magic, to stand on their side. To read the exciting novels, go to Falloon Novel Network. So next, you have to perfect the plan against Sylvie. At this point, Murdoch suddenly asked, by the way, Wanda, who has mastered chaos magic, has been with Lin En for more than 20 days. So, is Lin En's body marked by chaos magic? I don't know. Faced with Murdoch's question, Samalo shook his head very straightforwardly. I am just a hell creature who can't even reach the level of a dimensional lord. How can I sense such a high-level power as chaos magic? Maybe you could try it next time. Come on, I don't want to be torn apart. Once Wanda casts chaos magic on me, I'm afraid even the Master can't save me. Watching Murdoch turn around and prepare to leave this universe, Samalo stretched his back, and his originally hunched body straightened up. Finally, I don't have to be a slave in front of that Black Doctor. You know, calling a Master all the time makes me sick to death. After that, Samalo and Murdoch left this universe together universe. Not long after the two disappeared, the figure of the half-succubus Dillies slowly appeared in an ancient tree. Yes, she was left here by Lin En on purpose. After all, who can say more about hiding from being discovered than the creatures of hell? Originally, Lin En thought that if he destroyed Samoro, a creature from the Hell Dimension, the mastermind who issued the soul restriction to him would definitely find out. Maybe he would come to check. And if he stayed here, the mastermind would definitely not show up. But I didn't expect that Dillies actually heard such a shocking news. Oh my God, the mastermind mentioned by the Master is just a pawn of another person behind the scenes. Thinking of this, Dillies immediately activated the restriction issued by Lin En, and then returned to Lin En as soon as possible. In Lin En's apartment in New York, listening to the news brought back by Dillies, Lin En was surprised for the first time. Originally, he thought that the blackened Dr. Strange from the multiverse behind Samoro was the mastermind, but he was just a pawn. Also, the chaos magic Wanda appeared in front of him and Natasha on the day of the Hanging Sun and told him that Thanos invaded the Time Management Bureau. These are actually the moves of the real person behind the scenes. So, who is the person behind the scenes? What does he want to do? Lin En now even suspects that the news brought back by Dillies, a half-succubus, is also in the plan of the person behind the scenes. TSK. This universe seems ordinary, but unexpectedly, the water is really deep. The side quest of saving Wanda and Pietro is completed, and the ability to summon skeletons has reached advanced level. Currently, the number of skeleton warriors that I can effectively transform is 1,000. According to the ratio of this skill, I can transform 10,000 skeleton warriors in the next stage. Looking at the character panel of the system, Lin En thought for a moment. Finally, I decided that no matter who the real mastermind is, strengthening myself is the most important thing. Thinking of this, Lin En opened the system compilation page. After this period of getting along, the creation points increased by 50 points, which means that I can still compile 5 videos. 3 days later, in the Avengers base on Staten Island, in Wanda's villa. Wanda, do you really believe the evidence given by Tony Stark? After brewing coffee and pouring a cup for Wanda, Pietro sat opposite her and said, although I don't know how you know these people who call themselves the Avengers. They are even willing to provide us with such a luxurious residence. But I don't think there is a free lunch in this world. So, before Pietro finished speaking, Wanda smiled and said, don't worry, I know why, but we haven't awakened yet. Don't think too much. After all, there's nothing worth plotting between us two siblings. It's brother and sister." Just when he was about to say brother and sister, he shrugged when he saw Wanda's eyes. "Forget it. If she says it's brother and sister, then it's brother and sister. There are some things I can't tell you for now. Pietro, you will know sooner or later." Just as he was talking, he suddenly heard the artificial intelligence Tinus in the villa reminding him that Lin En had arrived at the Avengers base. Hearing Tinus's reminder, Wanda's eyes lit up, and then she immediately stood up and prepared to go out. Wanda! Seeing Wanda like this, Pietro immediately followed her. 3 days ago on the Quinjet fighter, Pietro found that Wanda's eyes were not right when she looked at Lin En. Although Lin En was wearing a mask at that time, giving people a cold feeling. But the way Wanda looked at Lin En was like looking at a lover. Pietro admitted that Wanda was about to turn 18 and was at the age of falling in love. But isn't this the first time they met? You know, Wanda is not the kind of person who can't walk when she sees a handsome guy. Something is wrong. 11 out of 10 things are wrong. In the square of the Avengers base. Is this the rocket you made? Looking at the logo of Tony Stark and Lin clearly printed on the rocket, Lin turned to Tony and smiled. "Are you going to play your cards openly?" Hearing what Lin said, Tony Stark shrugged. "There's no way. If I go to look for them directly, I am worried that they will not come out to see me. I know me too well, Daddy. When do we leave?" "I'm waiting for the second experimental data." After circling the rocket, Tony looked at Lin and replied, "Although I can't wait to go to the moon with you right now. But this time we have to be far away from the Earth, so I have to do more experiments." Hearing what Tony said, he thought of how Tony Stark took off wearing the armor several times without waiting for the experimental data after developing it. Lin nodded. "What's your look?" Looking at Lin's gratified look, it was as if he was saying that you have finally grown up. Tony was speechless and raised his middle finger to Lin. "Damn, is this guy taking advantage of me?" Seeing Wanda running from her villa, Tony hugged his arm and bumped Lin's shoulder. "Wow, this beautiful girl is here to see you. Dude, you really don't want to move in with me?" "Maybe." Without waiting for Tony Stark to finish, Lin tore off a seal from the rocket and put it on his mouth. If he continued to talk, maybe this guy would spit out something. Tony Stark spit several times after tearing off the seal on his mouth. "What are you looking at?" Steve Rogers, who came from not far away, followed Tony's gaze. Looking at Wanda and Lin, who were smiling not far away, he nodded. "This is youth. Come on, my youth is much more exciting than theirs." Turning his head to look at Steve, Tony Stark shrugged and said, "Do you want me to tell you about my past? I promise this is an exciting youth of a talented young man who is extremely desirable and full of passion." Seeing Tony's smug expression, Steve thought for a few seconds. Does your youth have pepper? In one sentence, Steve's words made Tony Stark silent for a long time. "Damn it, Steve, you have learned bad things. Have you been infected by Natasha?" "Huh." To read the novels, go to Falloon Novel Network. Patting Tony on the shoulder, Steve smiled and said, "Don't push it to Natasha. If I am really infected, it must be you who infected me." Zero seeking flowers 0. Watching Wanda and Lin slowly walking on the lawn towards the river, Steve said with a little emotion, "One is about to turn 18, and the other is just 20 years old. It really makes people miss the youthful time of that age." "I've seen your documentary, Steve. You were skinny and short back then." Without waiting for Tony to finish his venomous words, Steve Rogers turned around and left without hesitation. Tony is getting more and more venomous. You don't need to think about what he's going to say next. Time flies. In early October, inside the Avengers base, Wanda, who didn't come back last night, looking at Wanda, who just returned to the villa early this morning, Pietro asked with a strange expression. "Zero. Don't ask if you shouldn't ask." Glazing at Pietro, Wanda sat on the sofa and played with her phone happily. At the same time, she was thinking whether she should move all her clothes and luggage to Lin's apartment today. After more than 3 months of getting along, Wanda has determined that Lin is the one who is worth her efforts. "So, why are you coughing?" Putting down the phone and watching Pietro deliberately coughing to attract her attention, Wanda put down her phone and sat up straight. Go ahead. What do you want to ask? Are you and Lin En really together? Yes. Nodding. Wanda did not hide anything from Pietro. Did you stay at Lin En's place last night? Yes. But, no buts, I'm not a child anymore. As soon as the voice fell, the spoiler system sounded in my ears. New video has appeared. Please enter the viewing room within 5 minutes. Hear the system prompt sound. Wanda immediately pretended to be sleepy and yawned. I didn't sleep well last night. I'm going back to my room to take a nap. Don't disturb me. After that, Wanda ran back to the room. Wanda's walking posture was a little awkward. Pietro suddenly felt sour in his heart. How could he not know what happened? The sister who was raised by him since childhood had only been with Lin En for 3 months, and he... What a beast! Forget it, as long as my sister is happy and feels happy. 3. In the theater, looking around, Tony Stark said to Thor, Thor, where's the tree man? Why didn't I see him coming? Not sure. Faced with Tony's question, Thor shrugged. By the way, Natasha said you were going to fly to the moon in that rocket. Do you need me to go with you? No. Lin will accompany me. Even if there is any danger, as long as Lin is there, then... Before Tony Stark finished speaking, the system's voice sounded again. Note, due to the death of Tree Man Groot, one person is specially added to the venue. Hearing the system's voice, the theater, which was just bustling, suddenly became quiet. Tree Man Groot died? The sudden news made everyone feel depressed, not because they had a deep relationship with Groot. It is because 840 has seen what will happen in the future time and time again, that they are full of confidence in the future. They even forgot that the future is full of dangers. It is not that they know what will happen in the future, and dangers will not happen to them. The death of Groot the Treeman has given us a wake-up call. Looking at the silent crowd, Nick Fury said, Since we got the spoiler system, we have been full of optimism about the future. But in fact, the future of our Earth is still full of crises and challenges. Fury is right. Steve, who was silent for a while, also nodded. Thanos' snap turned billions of people into ashes, and Natasha jumped off the cliff for the Infinity Stone. Everyone, we have been too relaxed during this period. Even forgetting accidents, even death can come to us at any time. At this point, Steve took a deep breath, then looked at everyone and said solemnly, But don't worry too much. After all, we have mastered the key to face the future. As long as we take the future seriously and treat everything that will happen in the future, even if sacrifice will accompany us, I believe that we will win every victory. Wow, that's great. As soon as Steve's voice fell, a voice appeared behind him. Looking behind Steve, I saw a raccoon in clothes appear in front of everyone. Although I don't want to interrupt your speech, where is this? Seeing Rocket Raccoon appear here, everyone was stunned. Oh my God, the little raccoon can talk. Coming to Rocket Raccoon, Tony Stark just stretched out his hand to touch Rocket Raccoon's head. But Rocket Raccoon opened his mouth and almost bit his hand. Hey, you lowly creature, you better show some respect to me. Tony Stark, who was almost bitten, heard Rocket Raccoon say this, frowned and said, It's really eye-opening. I didn't expect a raccoon to talk. But the red panda wearing clothes, is it because you ate the mutant bamboo shoots that you can talk? Red panda wearing clothes? Hearing Tony describe himself like this, Rocket Raccoon turned his head and looked at Steve Rogers. Is he praising me? To be precise, it should be a mockery. Damn it. Hearing Steve's explanation, Rocket Raccoon immediately glared at Tony Stark. Since it is a mockery, you should use a mocking tone, otherwise I don't know what you mean at all. Faced with Rocket Raccoon's rebuke, Tony Stark shrugged. Then he turned to Thor and said, Is he the new guy who replaced Groot to enter the theater? Compared to him, I like Groot more. At least Groot doesn't bite people. Before Thor could speak, Rocket Raccoon immediately stepped forward. Do you know Groot? You know Groot too? Natasha came over from the side and came to Rocket Raccoon. The Groot you were talking about, is it a tree man who is nearly 3 meters tall? Although I don't know which planet you are from, and I don't know what unit you were talking about 3 meters tall. But I do have a friend named Groot, but unfortunately, when mentioning Groot, Rocket Raccoon lowered his head with some sadness. To save us, Groot died. Feeling Rocket Raccoon's sad tone, Natasha squatted in front of him and comforted him softly. It seems that the Groot you're talking about is indeed the same as the Groot we know. Issue. To read the novel, go to Falloon Novel Network. This is the viewing room. Only those who have obtained the spoiler system can come here. Told Rocket Raccoon how they knew Groot and the purpose of this place thorough. Hearing the comfort in Natasha's tone, Rocket Raccoon was silent for a few seconds and said, "Since you're Groot's friends, you can call me Rocket." It turns out that Groot can see the future. So, did he know that he would die to save us? Looking at Rocket Raccoon, who raised his head with sadness in his eyes, Natasha was silent for a few seconds, but did not continue to speak. After all, they had never seen the future of Groot's death. Gently patting Rocket Raccoon on the back, Natasha smiled and said, "Sit down first, that's Groot's position. The future segment will start soon." After hearing what Natasha said, Rocket Raccoon walked towards the seat with his head down. After Natasha returned to her seat, she exchanged a look with Nick Fury. Transformed. After saying this with her lips, Natasha stopped talking. Just now, she comforted Rocket Raccoon. Natasha discovered the traces of transformation on Rocket Raccoon. To confirm, she even used her hand to soothe it. So it is certain that this is a trace of transformation, not a trace left after the wound scarred. Hearing Natasha say this, Nick Fury sat in a chair calmly. Transformed 3.3. Experimenting with animals? What kind of people or what kind of civilization can transform a raccoon into a life form with human intelligence? Thinking of this, Nick Fury suddenly turned his head and looked at Rocket Raccoon. Seeing Thor talking to Rocket Raccoon about Groot, Nick Fury gently stroked his eye mask. He thought of a point that no one else in the theater had thought of. That is, people like them can understand the language spoken by the raccoon who calls himself Rocket. And Rocket Raccoon can also communicate with people like them. So, is this a translator or something? Or does the person who transformed this raccoon know the Earth language? Nick Fury knows that there are translators in the universe. After all, Carol showed him one back then. As the lights in the theater dimmed, the screen soon lit up. The first thing that caught everyone's eyes was a dim world on the screen. The sky of the whole world seemed to be polluted. It was dark even in the daytime. The camera gradually pulled down, and a battle was taking place. A man holding a long knife and carrying a bow and arrow was constantly slaughtering one guy after another. Beside him, a woman wearing a somewhat worn Spider-Man suit was helping him deal with the enemy. Crack! As the long sword cut the throat of the last enemy, the masked man shook off the blood on the long sword and put the long sword back into the sheath. Turning his head to look at the woman in the spider suit, the man praised, "Medi, compared with your father Peter Parker, you have a little more decisiveness in killing." As he spoke, the man took off his mask. After seeing the man's true face, everyone in the theater, especially the Avengers members, all looked serious. Nothing else. This masked guy is none other than Clint Barton, Hawkeye, one of the Avengers. But compared to the Barton they knew, the Barton on the screen looked old and gray. Obviously, this is Barton's old age. Is this decades later? Thinking of the scene at the end of the last video, when the old Spider-Man Peter Parker woke up Steve Rogers from the green nutrient solution, Natasha had some guesses in her mind. Perhaps this is what the last video content shows. On the screen, hearing the praise in Clint Barton's tone, the Spider-Woman took off her hood and revealed a delicate face. "You taught me this, Uncle Barton. You have been teaching me since my father and mother died. And if my sister is still alive, or Lila." Before Medi Parker finished speaking, Clint interrupted directly. "Medi, I can't help but say not to mention the dead relatives. Excessive nostalgia for the deceased relatives will make us weaker. And in this world that has undergone earth-shaking changes, weakness will only kill us." "Yes, Uncle Barton." Hearing Barton's warning, Medi Parker nodded solemnly. "Wardfa." In the viewing room. Seeing this scene, Peter Parker exclaimed immediately, "What's wrong?" Hearing Peter Parker's exclamation, Steve Rogers and Tony Stark looked at him curiously. "You just heard. Uncle Barton on the screen said that Maddie's father is called Peter Parker. Could this be my daughter? Also, Maddie said her parents are dead. Could this be my future self? Or is there also someone called Peter Parker in your universe? The Spider-Man of the universe? At this point, Peter Parker looked at Steve and Tony and said, "The most important thing is that Gwen, my girlfriend, and I have talked about the future. We even agreed to name our daughter Annie Mae Parker, but this Meddy said that her sister Annie..." God. Seeing Peter Parker's complicated expression, Steve Rogers immediately comforted him. "Hey, Peter, this may not be what happened to you. You should know that you are not the Spider-Man of our universe." After listening to Steve's comfort, Peter Parker was silent for a few seconds, and then nodded, "I hope so." Just when Peter Parker was comforting himself, the conversation between the two people on the screen completely dispelled his fluke. Inside the screen, Uncle Barton, "Are we going to find Uncle Thor?" Looking at the corpses all over the ground, Meddy Parker asked. "Of course, New York? Oh, it should be called Utopia now." Looking in the direction of the former New York, Clint Barton said, "Although we don't know which universe Lin and Wanda went to, we can't just sit there and wait for death. We failed 30 years ago, but Peter has resurrected the captain. To read the exciting novels, go to Falloon Novel Network." Speaking of this, Clint Barton turned his head and looked at Meddy Parker. "Speaking of Peter, I remember the scene when your father came to this universe with the Fantastic Four. At that time, he and Peter Parker of our universe, as well as another older Peter Parker, formed 3 generations of Spider-Man. The scene was spectacular. Unfortunately, your father died in that final battle. Although Peter Parker in our universe has been connected to the web of fate, but only Peter Parker, who can shoot spider silk from his body, survived." Huh. Hearing Uncle Barton talking about the past, Meddy Parker said helplessly, "Uncle Barton, you just said not to recall the past." Haha. Okay, you have to understand that an older person will always forget what he said. Love, since the first generation of Avengers died, scattered, and got old, I often dreamed of them. At that time, forget it, I won't talk about it. Waving his hand, the old-age Clint Barton said, "Let's go and find that guy Thor. We have to be careful on the road." After all, after Bruce Banner and Hulk became one, the end of the war made him not so clear-headed, so that the Hulk gang was born. TSK, if Natasha was still alive. Oh, if Natasha was still alive, it would be great. She gave me hope once, but no one gave me hope a second time. But Thor seems to be getting more and more powerful. But no matter how powerful he is not as strong as his 523 daughter Xiao AI. The old and the young walked and talked, and as the screen slowly pulled up, a 3-meter-tall, more than 10-meter-long giant Ant-Man suit corpse appears in the background. Oh my God! In the theater, seeing this scene, everyone in the theater was stunned. What happened in the future world? Why is the scene full of broken walls and yellow sand, similar to a scorched earth world? Also, what is the war that Hawkeye mentioned in his old age? It shouldn't be the Thanos incident. Looking at the screen, all the Avengers in the theater frowned. Only Thor was stunned for a moment. Then he said to Natasha beside him, "What did the old Clint say just now? I will have a daughter in the future. And my daughter's name is Xiao AI, and she is stronger than me. Oh my God, who is my daughter? Is it Jane? When was my daughter born?" Looking at Thor with an excited and curious face, Natasha made a shushing gesture. "Keep watching and you will know." Although she said so, Natasha's expression was solemn. Just now, the old Hawkeye said that he was the only one left. Although I don't know what this sentence means, I know that Clint's daughter is called Lila. The reason why Lin En compiled this series is to remind everyone in the Avengers that a very mysterious and powerful guy has set his sights on this universe. As for who it is, Lin En doesn't know. But the person who can fool Black Doctor Strange and make Murdoch bow down to him must be no ordinary person. As for what conspiracy this mastermind will create in the future, although Lin En doesn't know, he can compile it. It doesn't matter even if it is compiled wrong. After all, what the Avengers are watching now is what happened decades later after the mastermind won the battle. So Lin En just combined the Old Age series and used the Old Age series as an introduction to tell the Avengers that there is such a powerful enemy. In the viewing hall, I'm dead after all. Looking at everything on the screen, Peter Parker looked a little depressed. I really want to know what will happen in the future and what that war will be like. Hearing the frustration and anxiety in Peter Parker's voice, Steve patted his shoulder with a serious expression. On the screen, the video continued to play. In the picture, Meddy Parker was sitting on the steps of the wooden house, chatting with a tree man who looked very strong. I'm Groot. You're right, Groot. These old people always like to talk about the past when they get together. I'm Groot. Haha, Groot, is Uncle Rocket like this too? As the two were talking, Rocket Raccoon, whose beard was a little gray, came over from not far away with a few bottles of wine. Hey, Meddy, Groot, are you two complaining about me again? I've been on Earth for so many years. Even if you don't complain about me, I can still hear it. Raised his hand and touched Groot's head, watching Groot shake his head. Rocket pointed inside the house. Thor and Clint are inside. In the theater, Ward sent. Seeing this scene on the screen, Rocket stood up from his chair excitedly. Groot? Huh? Rocket, isn't Groot dead? Sorry, this Groot seems to be different from the Groot we know. Seeing Groot on the screen and Rocket with a little excitement in his eyes, Natasha asked curiously. Yes, Groot is indeed dead. Staring at the screen without blinking, Rocket Raccoon said in a trembling voice, Groot is a flora colossus, so after he died, I replanted a branch of him. I didn't expect Groot to be resurrected. Speaking of this, Rocket Raccoon's hands trembled a little. Although he knew that the resurrection in the video, the Groot of the past, is not the original Groot. But so what? At least, the second generation Groot is still his partner. Looking at Rocket Raccoon's excitement, Natasha patted him gently. Don't be excited. Go back to your seat. The video is not finished yet. Okay. Took a deep breath and calmed down the excitement in his heart. Rocket Raccoon returned to his seat, staring at the screen, afraid of missing any details of Groot. On the screen, old Rocket Raccoon entered the room with a few bottles of wine, and soon a girl holding a storm axe came out. Hi, Xiao AI. Seeing Xiao AI coming out, Meddy Parker smiled and greeted her. Long time no see, Meddy. To read the exciting novels, go to Falloon Novel Network. Coming to the steps and sitting next to Meddy Parker, Xiao AI smiled and said, I thought you would stay with Uncle Parker. Aunt Mary thought so too, but after all, my father entrusted me to Uncle Barton. At this point, Meddy Parker looked back into the house, listening to Thor and Clint Barton talking about the Avengers. Meddy pondered for a few seconds, then said to Xiao AI, if we want to go to New Utopia to support Uncle Rogers and Uncle Parker, we must pass by the Hulk gang. Unless we take a detour, but that's too far, so I think we can go and explore the way. Uncle Barton and Uncle Thor are old, and the fighting should be left to us young people. Hearing Meddy Parker say this, Xiao AI turned around and listened to the laughter in the house, and then began to reminisce about the two people and the raccoon in the past. Then he nodded. No problem. The Hulk gang is vulnerable to those scumbags. As long as we don't encounter the out-of-control Hulk, it is still very easy to clear a path. As he said, AI turned his head and looked at Groot. Will you join? I am Groot. Then it's settled. As he said, AI picked up the Stormbreaker and left. After a while, an off-road vehicle appeared in front of the two. Let's go and open the way first. Inside the wooden house, after drinking a glass of strong liquor, Clint Barton leaned back in his chair and said, It was Rocket who proposed to let Captain fall asleep. I didn't expect that this proposal would work in just more than 20 years. What a pity. If Lin was still alive, maybe we wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. Burp. Who said it wasn't? Thor, who had a burp, an old face, white hair, and a golden eye mask, sighed. I don't know where Lin and Wanda went. The turmoil caused by the evil multiverse, Stephen Strange, almost destroyed our universe. Although Lin killed that evil Stephen Strange, but it is obvious that he is just a pawn of the mastermind behind the scenes. But if Tony Stark, who became a god, had not made so many mistakes and finally gave up the power of God to restore everything to normal, then maybe our power Molly Zhao, will be even stronger now. Hearing what Thor said in the video, all the Avengers were a little surprised. The darkened Stephen Strange of the multiverse? The last time they watched the video, they knew that there would be a mystic wizard Stephen Strange in the future. It's just that this guy is still a neurologist and has not had any adventures for the time being. In order to prevent Stephen Strange from losing his adventures due to excessive intervention, so Nick Fury even asked the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who were monitoring him to withdraw. But now, there is another darkened Stephen Strange of the multiverse. So, this darkened version of Strange in the future and the Black Hand behind him are the culprits that will cause the Earth to become like this in the future. Others were thinking about this matter. Only Tony Stark was a little stunned. Is he going to become a god in the future? Facing the curious eyes of the crowd, Tony Stark spread his hands. Don't look at me like that. You know my future. I snapped my fingers and died in the final battle, so I don't know if I became a god. But then again, it's not surprising that I became a god. After all, I'm the greatest genius of this century. Looking at Tony Stark's arrogant look, everyone shook their heads. But Rocket Raccoon looked at him. Genius? Ha! You are just a slightly smarter person among the stupid humans on Earth. Well, just like the lizard on the planet Caro. Hearing Rocket Raccoon's sharp tongue, Tony Stark raised his eyebrows and said in a very sincere tone, Hey, Natasha, have you seen the same plush toy? I really admire his sharp tongue, so I want to buy it home and put it in the bathroom. Faced with Tony's metaphor, Rocket Raccoon turning his head to look at Thor. Like, is he expressing his love for me? This should be a mockery of you. Damn it. I said that mockery should be done in a sarcastic tone. Looking at Rocket Raccoon, who was about to pounce on Tony Stark, Thor quickly held him down. Stop it, or you will be kicked out of the theater. Damn it. I hate this earthling with an unclear tone of 007. Mumbling back to the chair, Rocket Raccoon turned his eyes back to the screen. On the screen, why are you wearing an eye patch again? Looking at Thor with a golden eye patch and one eye missing, old Rocket Raccoon held a wine glass and asked, I remember I gave you an eye when I went to the dwarf planet to forge the Storm Axe. Don't tell me that your sister has resurrected and then blinded your eyes with a sword. Faced with Rocket Raccoon's curiosity, Thor laughed and said, How is it possible? After I became king, the foundation of Asgard was shattered by Surtur. How could Hela be resurrected again? But speaking of it, compared to me and Loki, perhaps Hela, the first heir to the throne of Asgard, may be more suitable to be king than me. After all, if Hela became the king of Asgard, maybe so many things would not have happened later. There is no way. Her ambition was too big at the time. I heard on the screen that I have a sister, Hela. Thor in the theater suddenly lost his voice and said, Hela, my sister? Why have I never heard of her? Hearing Thor's loss of voice, everyone looked at Thor curiously. Don't you know you have a sister? I don't know. Facing everyone's curious eyes, Thor shook his head. As far as I can remember, I have never heard that I have a sister named Hela. In Asgard, I am first heir to the throne. Speaking of this, Thor frowned, and after I became king, Asgard was destroyed by the fire giant Surtur. Odin, what happened in the future? Looking at Thor's eyes flashing with urgency, he seemed to want to leave the theater and return to Asgard immediately. Steve Rogers hurriedly said, Thor, since we can see the future, it means that everything can still be changed. So, you can rest assured for the time being, at least wait until you finish watching this video. Hearing Steve say this, Thor was silent for a moment, then nodded. However, Thor still made up his mind to return to Asgard as soon as possible after watching today's future clips. There's only one possibility for him to become the king of Asgard. That is, his father entered Valhalla. Damn it. Why would his father die in the future? Asgard would be destroyed by the fire giants. And why had he never heard of Hela, his sister? All these questions made Thor a little uneasy for a while. Took a deep breath and forced himself to stabilize his anxious emotions. Thor looked back at the screen. The camera turned, and Metapark and AI, as well as the tree personality, Ajay, Root, were killing people on the territory of the Hulk gang. As a result, the fierce battle led the irrational Red Eye Hulk out. Come. But this Hulk is different from the Hulk known by the Avengers. At this time, Hulk is wearing white shorts, but his body has turned blue. To read the exciting novels, go to Falloon Novel Network. And he can also emit cosmic energy. His fighting power is so terrifying that even Love holding the Stormbreaker is no match for him. At the critical moment, Thor and others rush to the scene to rescue the 3 children from the Captain of the Universe Hulk. However, facing the crazy blue Hulk, everyone still found it difficult to resist. At the critical moment, Clint Barton took out a slender necklace with a small arrow on it. Then the irrational and furious Hulk stopped attacking. Watching the blue-skinned Hulk on the screen stand there in a daze after getting the necklace. In the theater, Natasha was also a little stunned. What's wrong? On the side, Wanda saw Natasha frowning and asked curiously, It's okay, nothing. Turning her head and smiling at Wanda, Natasha turned her eyes back to the screen. The necklace in the video is obviously hers. It was specially made to commemorate her friendship with Clint. But why did the Mad Hulk stop going crazy after getting his necklace? Will something happen between him and Dr. Banner in the future? The video continues. Looking at the calmed Hulk, Clint Barton stepped forward and said, Bruce, Hulk, decades have passed. If Natasha is still alive. Before Clint finished speaking, Hulk suddenly looked up at the gray sky and roared. The camera turned to New York, or the New Utopia. Captain America and Peter Parker, as well as Clint, Thor, and others, were fighting countless enemies. And the appearance of the surrounding city was not the New York City familiar to everyone in the theater. Every time a wave of enemies was killed, more enemies would rush out from all directions to surround everyone. Not to mention that there were countless monsters in the corners constantly joining the battlefield. Ooh. Steve took a breath and kicked the enemy who attacked him with a shield. Then he looked at Thor beside him and said, This reminds me of the New York battle when Loki led the Chitauri to invade the Earth. But compared to those Chitauri, these people are several times stronger. Why, are you tired? Hearing the old captain talking about the Battle of New York, Thor told the conversation between the two of them in the Battle of New York. I can fight them all day long. Looking at Thor and laughing, the old Captain America seemed to have regained the passion of the past at this moment. A group of old superheroes constantly fight against the evil villains who have ruled the Earth. In the last part of the video, Lin En, wearing the judge's mask, descended from the sky as if he was stuck in the last few seconds. Kill all the villains and monsters that surrounded the old hero. Unfortunately, until the video progress bar was finished, the Avengers did not see the real mastermind behind the scenes, who it was. As for why Lin En wore a mask, well, okay, after all, this is 50 years later, and Lin En doesn't know what he will look like in 50 years. Maybe he has already become immortal, so he just appeared in the last few seconds and wore a mask. As for why the villains behind the scenes did not appear in the end, the reason is also very simple. That is, Lin En doesn't know who the master mentioned by Murdoch and the creature in the Hell Dimension is. As the video finished playing, the lights in the viewing hall lit up, but no one left. Now we know that the Dark Stephen Strange is also a pawn of the mastermind behind the scenes. In the last part of the video, when Lin appeared to help Steve and the others out of trouble, he said that the Dark Stephen Strange came to our universe before the Battle of New York broke out. Looking at everyone, Natasha said, So I guess maybe the Dark Stephen Strange may already be in our universe now. After listening to Natasha's guess, Steve Rogers, who had been silent all the time, nodded. I agree with Natasha's guess. Perhaps the blackened version of Stephen Strange is secretly planning something, and the target is us. Compared to this, I want to know more about my sister Hela. Why did I never know that I have such a sister? Standing up from the chair, Thor looked at everyone. I need to go back to Asgard first, and by the way, find out why Surtur has the ability to destroy Asgard. Hearing Thor say this, everyone nodded. After Thor left the theater in an instant, Tony Stark leaned back in his chair and said, Our universe is really full of disasters. Maybe I should find a way to put on a suit of armor for the Earth. Tony. Hearing Tony Stark say this, Steve was about to speak, but he was interrupted directly by Tony Stark. He pointed at the big screen and said, "Remember the quarrel we had in the video last time? This is the fuse. Isn't your quarrel because you created Ultron?" Wanda, who had been silent all the time, suddenly said, "I remember in the video, you created Ultron in order to put a layer of armor on the Earth." Hearing Wanda say this, Tony shrugged. But compared to this quarrel, I want to know more about the agreement that led to the split of the Avengers. Oh, and Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier. Looking at Steve Rogers, Tony Stark said, "I still remember the scene in the previous video where you and Bucky Barnes teamed up to beat me up." "Come on, Tony, that's just—" "Don't explain." Standing up from the chair, Tony Stark stretched. "I forgive you on behalf of my future self, and you know the reason. But if I see the Winter Soldier, maybe I won't want to kill him like I did originally, but I really want to beat him up. Don't worry, I will beat him up very gently." Hearing Tony say this, Steve Rogers smiled bitterly and shook his head. The Howards are not dead, but on the moon, which reduces Steve's burden a lot. But Bucky's whereabouts are still unknown. In theory, Alexander Pierce has been replaced by the Skrulls under Nick Fury. I only need to use Pierce to secretly find Bucky. But something went wrong. The last time I found the base that brainwashed Bucky, all the super soldiers inside were killed, and none of the Hydra guards were spared, and even Bucky disappeared. Even the satellites of S.H.I.E.L.D. could not find any trace of Bucky. Steve now only hopes that Bucky is still alive. As long as he is still alive, no matter who took him away, at least he still has hope of finding him. To read the exciting novels, go to Faloo Novel Network. When I had nothing before, at least I still had Bucky. Now, when Bucky has nothing, I will never give up on him. I'll go find the blackened Stephen Strange. Standing up from his chair, Nick Fury looked a little serious, although we already know who our future opponents are. But the mastermind behind the blackened Strange has subverted our universe in the original space. So we have to hurry up. If we don't want to become the original space in the future, then we have to prepare now. Zero seeking flowers. Perhaps as long as we find the blackened version of Strange, we can follow the clues to find the real mastermind behind the scenes. After discussing for a while, everyone left the theater. "Hey kid, are you okay?" Just as he was about to leave the theater, he saw Peter Parker, who was worried. Rocket Raccoon came to him and asked, "It's okay, nothing." Faced with Rocket Raccoon's sudden concern, Peter Parker was stunned for a moment, then waved his hands to show that he was fine. "It's good that you're fine. Isn't this the future? What will happen in the future? Now that we know what will happen in the future, maybe the future can be changed." Listening to Rocket Raccoon's comfort, Garfield's version of Peter Parker thanked him very sincerely. After all, in Peter Parker's heart, Rocket Raccoon in front of him is a guy with a sharp tongue who likes to poke people's hearts and mock others. But I didn't expect that he would suddenly comfort himself, which is a bit heartwarming. "Don't look at me like that, kid. I just lost my family, so I understand how you feel now." No, maybe it should be said that you just saw the future through the video, and you feel a little uncomfortable, but there is still hope for change. "But I really lost my family. If I can get this spoiler system in advance." Alas. Looking at Rocket Raccoon, who was in sorrow, Peter Parker squatted down and patted his shoulder gently to comfort him. But the next second, he heard Rocket Raccoon say, "But fortunately, the second generation of Groot has grown up in the future, which is also a comfort. By the way, kid, what is that thing on your wrist?" Faced with Rocket Raccoon's inquiry, Peter Parker immediately explained the function of the Spider Silk Launcher. "How much?" Sorry, I won't sell it." "Oh, then I'll order it." "That's fine, Mr. Rocket. I'll make one for you when I go back." Kid, you're a good person." Pat Peter Parker's arm, and Rocket Raccoon turned and left the theater. At the same time, Queens. Achoo. Peter Parker, who was doing his homework, sneezed and rubbed his nose subconsciously. For some reason, Peter Parker, who was just 10 years old this year, suddenly felt that he seemed to lose something on his wrist. Ding. Absorb the energy of the self-gem to store it, and then convert it into your own energy to attack. Looking at the system's introduction of his newly acquired skills, Lin En felt a little regretful. Although this ability has no upper limit, theoretically, he can even absorb enough self-gem power to convert it into his own energy, then punch out and blow up a planet. But this ability has a limit. That is, it cannot exceed the upper limit of his own physique. Otherwise, the energy of the self-gem that is powerful enough will burst his body. At present, after completing the side quest, his physique has reached 4 times that of an ordinary person. So the energy absorbed and converted is limited to this. However, as his physical fitness continues to improve, he may really be able to blow up a planet with one punch in the future, or even destroy a universe at will. After all, according to the system, compared with the other 6 infinite gems, 900, only the energy of the self-gem can be converted into the purest energy for his own use. After shutting down the system, Lin En got up and saw who had boiled the water, so he picked up the tea bag and put it in. Seeing the color of the water gradually deepen under the effect of the tea bag, Lin En took out his mobile phone and sent a text message to Wanda. Half an hour later, "Honey, I'm back." Seeing Wanda dragging a suitcase in, Lin En immediately stepped forward and took the suitcase from her hand. "Will you live here from now on?" "Yes." Putting her arms around Lin En's neck, Wanda stood on tiptoe and kissed Lin En on the lips, then smiled and tilted her head and said, "From now on, this will be our daily cohabitation." Bowed her head and intimate with Wanda for a while, Lin En smiled and said, "Pietro didn't say anything after knowing it?" "Of course not." Thinking back to the scene when she was packing her luggage, Pietro stared at her and kept muttering behind her. Wanda's eyes gradually curved into crescents. She was very happy when she knew I had a boyfriend. Speaking of this, Wanda sniffed gently, then looked towards the kitchen. "Honey, have you prepared lunch?" "Yes, we can eat now." After gently scratching Wanda's nose, Lin En was just about to take Wanda to lunch. But Wanda jumped up and threw herself on him, biting her lips and saying affectionately, "So, are you going to have lunch, or are you going to eat me?" Faced with Wanda's invitation, Lin En threw lunch behind his mind without hesitation. "What the hell, lunch? Who eats lunch? Youth doesn't enjoy itself. Do you have to wait until wrinkles appear?" At the same time, in a building in the suburbs of New York. "So we're going to live here forever?" Putting the lunch he bought on the table, Bucky Barnes raised his hand and took off the high-tech simulation mask on his face, revealing his true face. "The plan hasn't started yet, so don't rush to act." Sitting on the dining table and opening the pizza box, Stephen Strange, who was wearing a mask on half of his face, picked up the pizza and started eating. "It tastes good. In my collapsed universe, food has become a luxury. Don't you want to eat it?" Faced with strange question, the Winter Soldier sat on the chair and just picked up a can of beer and started drinking. "You said that you would let me go free after I help you complete that thing. Of course, this is my promise." As he said that, Stephen Strange turned his head and looked at the frozen lake outside. "You know, my first nightmare was the lake. I still remember the scene of my sister dying in the water. After that day, I had nightmares for a long time. I dreamed that my sister was standing outside my bedroom door with water dripping from her clothes, asking me why I didn't save her. For this reason, my parents took me to see a psychiatrist for a long time. That was the most terrifying nightmare of my childhood." At this point, Stephen Strange swallowed the pizza and then looked at Bucky Barnes. "But since I grew up, I rarely dream of my sister. I even often pray to God to let my sister appear in my dreams. Unfortunately, God never responded to me. I think this is my sister's punishment for me." After hearing Stephen Strange's words, Bucky was silent for a moment and drank the beer directly. To read the most exciting novels, go to Faloo Novel Network. Do you have fears or extravagant desires? Faced with Stephen Strange's question, Bucky Barnes threw the empty can into the trash can. "No, I just want to stop being controlled." "Okay, as you wish. I will give you freedom after the matter is over. You'd better keep your word." Getting up from the chair, Bucky Barnes looked at him coldly. "Otherwise, even if you are very strong, I will give everything to fight you." After saying that, Bucky turned around and went back to his room. Point zero. Looking at Bucky's leaving figure, Stephen Strange didn't care. He looked back at the frozen lake outside the window. Wait a minute, Christine. I will definitely save our universe. Inside Asgard Palace. Father, why didn't I know that I had a sister named Hela? Looking at Odin on the throne, Thor asked seriously. From the time I was born to now, for more than 1,500 years, I have never heard that I have a sister. Why is that? Why did you and Mother hide the fact that I have a sister? Faced with Thor's questioning, Odin's expression suddenly became serious. Just even Frigga, who was standing by, looked at her son in surprise. Thor, who told you that you have a sister named Hela? Hearing Odin's serious question, Thor was speechless for a moment. He didn't know how to answer this question. Answer me. Thor, who told you about Hela? Hearing Odin's tone become heavier, Frigga immediately stood up and walked slowly from the steps to Thor. My son, where did you know Hela in 1.3? Faced with his mother's gentle question, Thor hesitated for a long time and couldn't answer. Sorry, Mother. Before Thor finished speaking, Frigga raised her hand and gently brushed Thor's face. After a moment, he turned his head and looked at Odin and shook his head. It's not that someone deliberately instigated Thor to know this news. It's just that this power is very vague. Even I can't see it. But there is one thing I know very well. That is, this is beneficial to Thor. Although I don't know the specific situation, I think Thor will go further in the future. After hearing Frigga's words, Odin did not continue to question Thor. Instead, he sighed, slowly stood up from the throne and said, You are right, Thor. You do have a sister. She is the goddess of death, Hela. The surface of the moon. I found that I was really crazy. I didn't spend the first day of 2012 with my girlfriend Wanda, but went to the moon to spend it with a man. Lin, wearing a battle armor, was now on the surface of the moon, looking at the jumping Tony Stark and complaining. After adjusting the gravity of the battle armor and making sure that it could walk and fly like on the Earth, Tony turned around and smiled at Lin. Come on, buddy, spending the first day of the new year together on the moon. This is the ultimate romance for men, okay? Romance? Come on, why don't you be romantic with Steve? Coming to Tony, Lin smiled and said, You know Steve is worried, so he was ready to come together. In the end, you ruthlessly rejected it. Hearing Lin say this, Tony Stark shrugged. Originally, I was planning to let Steve join in. But since he decided to postpone his visit to Aunt Peggy 2 days ago and chose to come to the moon with us, I decided not to let him join. Looking at Lin, Tony Stark said very seriously, You have to know that Aunt Peggy has been waiting for this day for more than 70 years. Steve is the same, especially in the past 2 years. Aunt Peggy has not been in good health and has developed Alzheimer's disease. Sometimes even I don't recognize her. I am very worried that if they miss this opportunity, they will regret it for the rest of their lives. Looking at Tony's bright eyes, Lin was silent for a few seconds, then nodded. At Tony's funeral in the original time and space, the words written by Pepper on the arc reactor were correct. Although Tony is arrogant and venomous, he does have a warm heart. By the way, Lin, do you think we will have a chance to build a time machine in the future? Controlling the armor to fly side by side on the surface of the moon, Tony Stark observed whether there were any buildings or different places on the surface of the moon, while asking Lin En casually. Although he had seen the Avengers travel through time and return to the past in the theater, Tony Stark now wanted to know how he and his people in the future could create a time machine. He had no idea at the moment, and he asked other Avengers, but they didn't have any ideas either. Even after drinking, he asked that guy Rod, and he actually recommended him to watch the 2 science fiction movies Back to the Past and Groundhog Day. God, if you can find inspiration in science fiction movies, then those screenwriters should become scientists. Besides, Groundhog Day is a time loop movie. What does it have to do with a time machine? So after asking around and finding that no one had a reasonable suggestion, Tony Stark guessed that maybe the Avengers in the future could create a time machine to go back to the past. This matter may have a lot to do with Lin En. Maybe it was Lin En who gave the Avengers the inspiration to create the time machine. TSK. If the time machine is built now, then no matter what happens in the future, we will have a way to make up for it. Faced with Tony's question, Lin En knew what he was thinking. Took a look at the craters on the moon's surface, and then shook his head and said, time machines may only exist in science fiction novels or movies. If we can really build a time machine, it may not be a good thing. Hearing Lin En say this, Tony Stark asked curiously, why do you say that? Tony, each of us has regrets that we want to make up for. And we have also fantasized that if we can go back to the past one day, we must make other choices, right? That's right. Hearing Lin En's words, Tony nodded. But once we really have a way to go back to the past and make up for certain things or make different choices than at that time, then this is equivalent to changing the direction of the entire event in the future. Even a little change in the past timeline may bring about earth-shaking changes in the future. Just like 70 years ago, if we went back to the past and rescued Steve from the plane that was about to crash, maybe there would be no Captain Rogers in the Avengers now. Hearing Lin En say this, Tony Stark thought for a few seconds, thinking about the people who have obtained the spoiler system now and what these people are experiencing at this point in the original time and space. Then he nodded. That's right. Anyone who cheats time will be punished by time. Speaking, Tony Stark glanced at the similar scenery on the surface of the moon. Then he said to Lin En, we can't find it on the surface. Let's go, guys. Let's go to the back of the moon. If my parents are still on the moon, then they're likely to set up a camp on the back of the moon. Okay. Nodding, Lin En and Tony Stark flew to the mysterious back of the moon. To read the exciting novel, go to Falun Novel Network. The core of the moon. Looking at the moon's surface, two armors are flying at low altitude at this moment. Maria Stark's eyes were slightly red, and she turned to look at her silent husband and said, Honey, are we really not going to meet our little Tony? Tony hasn't seen us for more than 20 years. Although we can see Tony from time to time with the help of the Frog Maps equipment. But I can't imagine how sad our little 700 Tony must have felt in these 20 years. Looking at his wife's red eyes and excited emotions, Howard Stark gently hugged his wife and comforted her. I miss our son too, but Maria, you should know our responsibilities. In the past 20 years, I have watched Tony go from hugging his knees to hiding in the room and crying in regret, and then becoming a vagrant, and even being kidnapped in the Middle East. I have wanted to appear in front of our son more than once. To know Tony in the future, I am willing to do anything. But Maria, we can't do this. As he said, Howard patted his wife's back gently, looking at Tony and Lin flying to the back of the moon. It's almost there, Maria. Wait a little longer. After we find the next successor and the next wallkeeper, we can go back to Tony. Having said this, Howard Stark stood up and walked to a box, then took out 2 syringes filled with green medicine from the box. For more than 20 years, Howard and his wife have relied on this to stay young and strong. After all, although the ultimate eraser is a powerful artifact, it is useless if you don't have a strong physical fitness. The back of the moon. Tony Stark's eyes flashed with disappointment as he controlled the armor to land on the back of the moon. I knew they wouldn't come out to see me. Although his eyes were full of disappointment, his tone was still pretending to be indifferent. After all, if they wanted to see me, they wouldn't have not appeared in front of me for more than 20 years. Looking at Tony's indifferent look, Lin En thought for a while, then walked up and patted him on the shoulder and comforted him. Maybe it's not that your parents don't want to see you, but that they can't come out to see you. After all, in the eyes of the world, they died in a car accident as early as 1991. Besides, you also know your parents' responsibilities from Dilly's. Maybe they don't want to come out to see you because they are afraid of bringing trouble to you. Hearing Lin En's comfort, Tony Stark raised an eyebrow and said, Trouble? Do you think I'm afraid of trouble? Forget it. I didn't have much hope for this trip to the moon. Just a little. But forget it, as long as I know they are alive. Speaking of this, Tony Stark looked around and then said to Lin En, Do you remember which direction our rocket is in? Of course. Nodding, Lin En smiled and said, If we forget, won't we be on the moon for the rest of our lives? As they said, the two prepared to control the armor to fly to where the rocket was. But before the armor took off, they saw a burst of ashes floating in the moon crater in front, and then countless gravel suddenly floated into the air as if something was about to drill out of the crater in front. Seeing this scene, Tony Stark's eyes lit up. Lin, could this be? No! Standing in front of Tony Stark, a trace of solemnity flashed in Lin's eyes. I feel a strong magical atmosphere. If nothing unexpected happens, this should be someone using magic to open a certain dimension and then release the creatures in that dimension. As soon as Lin's voice fell, a roar came out from the crater. Ward? This is unscientific. Hearing the roar, Tony Stark immediately frowned and said, "There is no air in the universe, and there is no medium for sound transmission, but I just heard the roar. How is this possible?" Facing Tony Stark's wide-eyed look of disbelief, Lin En's expression was very solemn. "I don't know, but Tony, this thing should be very dangerous." As soon as the voice fell, a monster more than 30 meters high, with countless human arms and legs, jumped out of the crater in the next second. At first glance, this monster looked like it was made up of countless twisted corpses. The top of the monster was inlaid with hundreds of painful and resentful faces. Oh my God! Seeing such a horrible monster, Tony Stark subconsciously took a step back. Looking at the resentful expressions of black, white, or yellow people, Tony Stark felt that his soul was shocked. "FUXX Lin, what the hell is this?" Hearing Tony's voice became sharp, Lin shook his head. "I haven't seen it. There is no record of such a monster in the Book of the Dead. However, this is more like a monster made by sticking hundreds of dying people together." Listening to the painful sounds coming out of the monster's mouths, Lin frowned. Even he felt a lot of pressure from a monster in front of him. The core of the moon. Oh my God, what is this? Watching her son Tony and his partner Lin encounter such a monster, Maria immediately became nervous. "I don't know. We have lived on the moon for more than 20 years, but we have never seen such a terrifying thing." Looking at the screen, Howard Stark shook his head seriously. Watching the monster rushing towards Lin and Tony, neither Tony's armor's energy cannon nor Lin's magical ability could kill it. Even the released energy would be absorbed by the monster. Howard Stark's expression became more serious. "No, Tony is in danger, and our son's life is in danger. I have to save him." Saying that, Maria was about to activate the ultimate eraser, but was quickly stopped by Howard Stark. To read the violent novels, go to Falu Novel Network. Get out of the way. Looking at her husband, who was blocking her way, Maria said immediately, "Calm down, Maria, believe." "Calm down? How can you ask me to calm down?" A few years ago, when Tony was attacked by shells in the Middle East and kidnapped, we went to other dimensions to eliminate the monsters that were about to invade the Earth and missed it. So when we came back, we could only watch our son being tortured. But now, our son is in danger right in front of us. How can you still let me watch like this? That's our son." Seeing his wife's emotions out of control, Howard Stark hurriedly said, "Dear, our son will be fine. Have you forgotten that when Watu told us that Tony was the most important person in the future of this universe before he let us be the wall keepers with peace of mind? So don't worry, our Tony will be fine." "Watu, you actually believed him?" The observers never interfere with the development of the universe. Even if the universe is destroyed, they just watch quietly. "I don't believe them. Don't forget us and that multiverse female Loki." Shoo! Seeing his wife was about to tell the two of them about their suspicions and the plan of the Observer clan was spoken out. Howard quickly made a shushing gesture. "Tony is also my only child. Dear, believe me, I will not take risks with our child's life." Hearing Howard's comfort, Maria gradually calmed down. Taking a deep breath, Maria handed the ultimate eraser to her husband. Turning her head to look at Tony and Lin, who were struggling to deal with the monster, Maria's eyes were red. "Don't worry, once Tony and Lin are really in danger of their lives, I will show up even if it costs anything." Hearing her husband's decisive words, Maria finally couldn't help but throw herself into Howard's arms and cried bitterly. The back of the moon. FUXX. Controlling the armor to avoid the monster's attack, Tony released the palm energy cannon to hit the monster. But seeing that the monster actually absorbed the palm energy cannon, Tony Stark immediately frowned and said, "Damn it, Lin, this guy can not only absorb the energy attack we release, but also convert it into his own energy to counterattack us. Even any physical damage is useless. What should we do?" Looking at the approaching force in front of him, any physical and magical attacks would have no effect. Tony Stark was filled with anxiety. The remaining energy of the armor was less than 50%. If it lost energy on the moon, the consequences can be imagined. There is one last way. Hearing the impatience in Tony's tone, Lin En raised his hand and opened the armor on his wrist. Since this monster can absorb energy, let him absorb enough. As soon as the voice fell, a dazzling golden light flashed in Lin En's palm. The next second, this golden energy attacked the monster. Seeing the endless energy being absorbed and devoured by the monster, Lin En directly increased the energy output. This is Lin En absorbing the energy of the self gem and converting it into his own energy. The majestic and pure energy far exceeds the other 6 infinite gems. The body of the monster that absorbed the energy of the self gem began to swell instantly. In just a few seconds, the body of this monster, which was more than 30 meters tall, suddenly expanded to hundreds of meters. Oh my God! After the height suddenly increased, the monster kept roaring in pain. Tony Stark came directly to Lin and said, "What kind of ability do you have? This is simply incredible." 507 did not answer Tony's question. Instead, he pulled Tony Stark back dozens of meters at a rapid speed. As soon as the two landed, the next second the monster's body absorbed energy to the critical point. Then there was a violent explosion. Oh my God! Looking at the monster's explosion, it was splashed with scarlet and dark green liquid everywhere. Tony Stark's mouth twitched, and then he said to Lin, "I feel like I can't look directly at watermelon juice and kiwi juice in the past half month. But man, what is Dongdao? Is it a monster unique to the moon? It can actually make sounds in a vacuum environment. This alone is worth studying." Hearing what Tony said, Lin shrugged. Who knows? But it's obvious that this monster is made up of hundreds of dying people. It should be created by someone or some force using special energy. At this point, Lin turned his head and looked at Tony Stark and said, "Tony, have you recorded it from the distorted faces on the monsters? After we go back, we can investigate through these faces, and maybe we can figure out their identities from these cheeks." "It's already recorded." Nodding, Tony Stark said, "After returning to Earth, we can investigate through the global data center. If these living people are really turned into monsters by humans, it's simply too cruel." At this point, Tony Stark looked around, seeing that there was still no movement except for the floating corpses of monsters around. Then he said to Lin En helplessly, "They are really determined not to come out to see me. Even if their son encounters a monster crisis, they are unwilling to stand up and help." Hearing a hint of frustration and complaint in Tony's tone, Lin En suddenly said, "Could it be that they are not on the moon at all now?" "What do you mean?" Looking at Lin En, Tony Stark's eyes once again showed a glimmer of hope. "My half-succubus Dillies said that your parents often travel between the moon and other dimensions to prevent monsters from invading the Earth. Maybe they are in other dimensions at this moment, guarding the Earth in secret." After listening to Lin's advice, Tony Stark nodded. "It is very likely. No, it should be said that this possibility is very high. Otherwise, even if my father can't come out to see me because of his duties as a wallkeeper, my mother will definitely not watch her son being attacked by monsters and remain indifferent." After calming down again, Tony Stark returned to his usual character. Looking at the floating monster fragments ahead, Tony said to Lin, "Do you think we should take a piece back for research? Come on. To read the exciting novels, go to Faloo Novel Network." Stop Tony's idea. Lin said, "Who knows if this thing has any infectious things or other diseases that are catastrophic to ordinary people? If it is true, then Tony, you are the culprit for the destruction of the Earth." TSK. Thinking that what Lin said makes sense, Tony Stark sighed with some regret. "Let's go, buddy. We're not here the right time this time. Let's come to the moon again when we have a chance in the future." With that, The two flew towards the rocket. Back to the rocket, Tony Stark took out the flag that he had prepared long ago and then found a place to erect it. On the flag, it was written that Tony Stark and Lin are visiting. Looking at the words on the flag, Lin laughed and then boarded the rocket return capsule. As the rocket started, it headed towards the Earth, the center of the moon. Maria's eyes were full of reluctance. "We will meet Tony, dear, and when we finish what we agreed with the female Loki, everything will be over." Hearing Howard Stark say this, Maria nodded gently. Looking at the rocket flying away with reluctance, she sighed and said, "If we want to end our work, we must first find a suitable successor. Dear, how do you think Nick Fury is?" The current director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Hearing his wife's suggestion, Howard Stark thought about what Nick Fury had done over the years, those things. Although this guy has many problems and his mind is not clear, he is indeed capable enough. The most important point is that no matter how unscrupulous he is, protecting the Earth is his only purpose. Maybe when the time comes, we can consider making him the new wallkeeper. Seeing that her husband agreed to her proposal, Maria smiled. Just looking back at the rocket disappearing without a trace, her eyes were full of reluctance. Achoo! After sneezing, Nick Fury rubbed his nose. For some reason, just a moment ago, Nick Fury felt as if he was being stared at by someone. But that feeling passed in an instant, and Nick Fury just thought he was overthinking. "Hill, how is the cleanup work going?" Putting down the pen in his hand, Nick Fury asked Hill in front of him. "We have made 10% progress." In response to Fury's question, Hill replied, "According to the list provided by Pierce, we have eliminated about 10% of the Hydra members under various names and tasks. However, there are too many Hydra members. If they are completely eliminated, I am afraid that the strength of S.H.I.E.L.D. will be greatly reduced. It may even be completely paralyzed. So according to your request, we can only take it slowly now and strive to completely clean it up in 2014, which is 2 years later, and select new agents from the Eagle's Nest to replace their work." At this point, Hill suddenly asked, "Fury, why must it be before 2014? Is there any difference in this time node?" Nick Fury certainly wouldn't tell Hill about the future he had seen in the spoiler system. In 2014, Steve Rogers and his team destroyed Hydra and disbanded S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick hid something from Hill, but Wanda wouldn't hide anything from Lin. At the end of February, in Lin's apartment, "Oh my God, dear, come here." Hearing Wanda's surprised voice in the bathroom, Lin put down the teacup in his hand and came to the bathroom. Wanda, wrapped in a bath towel, looked at Lin with joy and said in an excited tone, "Look, dear." While speaking, Wanda's hands showed a trace of crimson magic. "Oh my God, I just found this when I was taking a shower. This feeling is so magical." Looking at Wanda's joyful face, Lin was also slightly surprised. Reaching out and gently holding Wanda's hand, he sensed the crimson magic emerging from Wanda's palm. Lin guessed that this was most likely related to the ego gem. After all, Wanda had been sleeping in the same bed with him for the past 6 months, and the ego gem should have stimulated the chaos magic power that Wanda already possessed. Just like the mind gem. It's just that Wanda's magic power is still very weak now. She has not fully mastered it, and has not advanced to the sequence of chaos magic. Of course, this is just Lin's guess. But from the fact that Pietro did not gain super speed, I know that my guess should be about the same. Looking at Wanda's excited face, Lin first wiped her dripping hair with a towel. After Wanda put on her clothes, Lin asked Wanda to try to control this ability. Since the ability had just awakened, Wanda was not very skilled in controlling it for a while. However, Lin En still has some experience in the use of magic, so he's been practicing with Wanda. A week later, in the Alliance, watching Wanda skillfully use the scarlet magic to break the building blocks and then reassemble them. The Avengers present. Well, only Dr. Banner was a little surprised because he was the only one who didn't have a spoiler system for the time being. As for Clint, he was not in the Avengers base at the moment. "Lin, how did Wanda get her magic?" Watching Wanda skillfully use the scarlet magic, Natasha handed the cut fruit to Lin En and then asked curiously, It's not clear yet, but I guess Wanda has this ability, but she has always lacked a condition for activation. It should be because she has been with me for a long time, so she accidentally activated Wanda's ability. Speaking of this, Lin En deliberately subconsciously touched the necklace on his neck. Seeing Lin En's actions, all the Avengers present thought of the necklace with the ego gem that Nemesis gave to Lin En in the theater. After hearing Lin's guess, Steve Rogers suddenly said, "Lin, according to what you said, if Wanda already has this ability, she just lacks a condition to activate it. Then, as Wanda's twin brother, does Pietro also have extraordinary abilities, but has not yet been activated?" As soon as Steve finished speaking, Pietro, with a curious look on his face, immediately looked at Lin. They had seen Pietro's super speed in the theater, so they knew that Pietro also had extraordinary abilities. Perhaps the only people who didn't know at the scene were Lin, Dr. Banner, and Pietro himself. It's possible. Facing Pietro's expectant eyes, Lin pretended to think for a few seconds and then nodded. "Honey, are you saying that Pietro might also have superpowers?" Seeing Lin nod, Wanda immediately stepped forward and took Lin's arm. "Then what do we need to do to activate Pietro's superpowers?" Before Lin could answer, Tony Stark immediately put down the coffee cup in his hand. "Maybe I also have superpowers, but they have never been activated." "Lin, how did you accidentally activate Wanda's abilities? How about I try it?" Looking at Tony's head, Lin pushed Tony aside speechlessly. How did he activate Wanda's superpowers? Is it because he and Wanda sleep with each other in their arms every night? When Lin thought about sleeping with a grown man in his arms at night, she thought it would be better to let Thanos snap his fingers and destroy all the people on Earth. "Tisk stingy." Tony Stark rolled his eyes and picked up the coffee cup again and said, "I just want to try if I have superpowers." Ignore Tony Stark's muttering. Lin looked at Pietro, who was expecting. "Pietro, you and Wanda are from the same mother. Theoretically, if Wanda has superpowers, you should have them too. Ask for flowers, so I could try to activate your abilities. Of course, this is just my guess. It doesn't matter." Hearing what Lin said, Pietro shrugged. "It doesn't matter if I don't have superpowers. After all, Wanda's ability to protect herself is enough." Seeing that Pietro was in a very good mood, Lin nodded. Turned to look at Natasha. Lin didn't say anything, but Natasha understood what she meant in a second. "I'll go prepare the training room and the medical room. If there is any accident, we can respond immediately." Seeing Natasha leave in a hurry, Tony Stark asked curiously, "You and Natasha have a good relationship, man. You know how many people can have such tacit understanding with Natasha?" "So far, I have only met one person, Clint Barton. Even Steve, who has performed many missions with Natasha, does not have this tacit understanding." Hearing Tony deliberately provoke in order to revenge for Lin En's push just now. To read the exciting novel, go to Falun Novel Network. Wanda laughed, then held Lin En's arm and didn't let go, to tell Tony Stark that your provocation was useless. Seeing that his provocation didn't work, Tony touched his nose. "Isn't it just a love affair? It's like no one has it. My relationship with Pepper is better." "Oh, I forgot there are 3 poor people without girlfriends here." Facing Tony Stark's indiscriminate attack, Dr. Banner pursed his lips and didn't say anything. Pietro was just excited to think about whether he could have extraordinary abilities in a while. As for Steve, he looked at the ceiling speechlessly. Sure enough, he is worthy of being Howard Stark's son. As for this bad, poisonous attack, he absolutely inherited Howard Stark's genes perfectly. After more than 10 minutes, the training room was closed. Looking at the cushions all around, even the walls were covered with a thick layer of cushions to prevent collisions and other accidents. Lin raised his eyebrows. Sure enough, Natasha was thoughtful, knowing that the Avengers had seen Pietro's super speed ability in the theater. So Natasha made professional anti-collision measures. As the training room and medical room were ready, everyone focused their attention on Lin. Entering the training room, looking at Pietro, who was full of expectation and excitement, Lin said, "I'm not sure when I can activate the extraordinary power in your body. So Pietro, you have to be mentally prepared." It's okay, Lin, just let it go. Hearing what Lin said, Pietro shrugged and looked at Wanda outside the transparent glass of the training room. The reason why Pietro wanted to gain extraordinary powers was not because it was so cool to have extraordinary powers, but once he had extraordinary powers, he would be able to protect Wanda better. In his heart, Wanda is now his only relative, so even if he risked his life, he had to protect Wanda. Perhaps feeling Pietro's determination, Wanda, outside the special glass, also clenched her fists tightly. Although we didn't see what happened to Pietro in the theater. But since the Ultron video, Pietro has never appeared again, which is enough to explain everything. So, Wanda will never let this kind of thing happen again. I will never allow Pietro to have any accidents. When she saw Lin raise his hand and the golden light enveloped Pietro, Wanda's heart was hanging, and her beautiful eyes were full of worry, fearing that something unexpected would happen. Huh? What are you doing? Clint Barton, who had just completed the mission, came to the training room and asked curiously. When he saw that the training room was now enveloped by dazzling golden light, Clint Barton immediately asked. Faced with Barton's curiosity, Natasha explained to him. When Barton heard that Lin could stimulate Pietro's superpowers, he immediately became interested. Can you ask Lin to check if I have any unactivated supernatural powers? Huh. Hearing Barton's words, Tony Stark laughed. Steve Rogers looked at the scene in the training room and said, "It's a good thing that Pietro can awaken his supernatural powers. After all, we don't know when Loki will lead the Chitauri to invade the Earth. But the stronger the defense of the Earth, the smaller our losses will be." Huh. Listening to Captain America's serious talk, Bruce Banner and Clint Barton all looked at him in surprise. Captain, are you saying that Loki will lead the Chitauri to invade the Earth in the future? How did you know? Seeing that no one had any unexpected expressions, Hawkeye and Dr. Banner looked at each other. Why do everyone know, but only the two of them don't understand? That's right. Looking at Hawkeye and Dr. Banner, who were somewhat puzzled, Tony Stark shrugged and said, "Not only will Loki lead the Chitauri invasion of the Earth, and also put the scene in New York, and even use the roof of the Stark Industrial Building as the key to open the wormhole. Even our Captain Rogers thinks that the Stark Industrial Building is a big and ugly building." Hearing the indignation in Tony's tone, Steve shook his head. "Tony, isn't what I said the truth?" Looking at Steve, Tony asked. "Wait." Seeing that the two started bickering again, Hawkeye hurriedly asked, "What's going on? Why do you all know that Loki will lead the Chitauri to invade the Earth? It seems that only Dr. Banner and I don't know at the scene. Damn it. Why do I feel that Dr. Banner and I are excluded?" Hearing Hawkeye say this, Natasha smiled and explained, "It's not just you and Dr. Banner who don't know. Lin and Pietro in the training room don't know about this either. Clint, I can't tell you how we know this, but maybe in the near future, you will also know this." Hearing Natasha's explanation, Hawkeye shook his head and then looked at Dr. Banner. "I think the four of us are excluded. Maybe we can join forces with Lin to form a new team. What do you think about calling Hawkeye?" Hearing Clint's joke, Dr. Banner shrugged. "It's better to call Hulk. After joining the Avengers for so long, in order to make everyone more tacit, they also work together to attack many arms dealers and evil groups in addition to the Hydra base in Sokovia. Dr. Banner also gradually integrated into the team and was no longer as restrained as at the beginning. So it was normal to joke around. To read the exciting novels, go to Falloon Novel Network." The two were joking with each other when a loud bang sound suddenly came from the training room. Hearing this sudden sound, everyone subconsciously looked towards the training room. Wanda's eyes were filled with worry. When the light of the self-gem faded, only Lin was left there, and Pietro was nowhere to be found. Oh my God! Seeing this, Wanda anxiously wanted to open the door and run in, but she heard a loud bang again. Then she saw Pietro rubbing his arm and appearing next to the thick wall. Just now I suddenly felt that everything around me seemed to slow down, so I subconsciously moved my feet, but I didn't expect to hit the wall directly. Fortunately, Natasha covered the wall with several layers of thick cushions. Otherwise, I'm afraid my arm would be broken. Pietro was speaking with an innocent look on his face. and the next second the wall he had just hit suddenly made a series of noises. Looking in the direction of the sound, he saw cracks appearing on the wall. Seeing this scene, Pietro's eyes widened immediately. "I just hit the wall twice and broke it. The superpower you activated should be related to speed." Looking at Pietro, who was surprised, Lin said, "But we need to let them test it for details." As he was talking, he saw the door of the training room opened. Wanda ran in impatiently. After carefully examining Pietro and making sure he was not injured, he said happily, "Pietro, have your extraordinary abilities awakened as well?" "Yes." Looking at Wanda with joy in her eyes, Pietro said proudly, "Now I have superpowers too." Lin said that I might have super speed or something like that. But in this way, I could be the first to appear and protect you if you're in danger in the future. Come on. Hearing Pietro's words, Wanda smiled brightly, but still said, "Don't forget, I am the older sister." As she spoke, Wanda came to Lin. "Thank you, dear." Took Wanda's hand and kissed the back of her hand. Looking at Steve and Natasha, who were smiling like ants the whole time, Lin said, "You should help Pietro test it first." In early May, on the banks of the Hudson River, sitting on a bench with Lin, admiring the sparkling river and feeling the gentle breeze blowing her hair, Wanda felt relaxed and happy. "Dear, if time could stop here, it would be great." Leaning on Lin's shoulder, she subconsciously took Lin's hand and held it with her fingers. Listening to Wanda's sigh, Lin smiled and kissed her on the forehead. The gentle breeze, the fragrance of the grass, the beautiful scenery, and the beloved girl. This really made Lin want to tie the day with a long rope. It would be nice if time stayed at this moment, but dear, didn't you always tell me that you wanted 2 babies? If time stopped at this moment. I hate it. Looking at Lin's teasing expression, Wanda rolled her eyes at Lin, then hugged Lin's arm tightly, leaned on Lin's shoulder and said, "I just want to have a home. I have been wanting it since I was 10 years old. In my imagination, my future home may not be very big, but it must be very warm. 13. I have a husband who loves me, and 2 very cute and naughty babies. If that's the case, I wish I could tie myself to these 3 people for the rest of my life." Speaking of this, Wanda raised her head, her eyes full of affection. "Dear, now we have a home and a husband. When can we have a child?" Facing the glimmer in Wanda's eyes, Lin En thought for a few seconds and said, "You just turned 18, and I'm only 21. I think we can wait for 2 or 3 years." "I think so too." Hearing what Lin En said, Wanda nodded. "Although many people become mothers at the age of 18 or even younger. And I also want to be a mother and want to make the family more complete, but I'm not sure if I'm ready to be a mother." As she said that, Wanda raised her head and kissed Lin En on the cheek, and then said very solemnly, "But you will definitely be a very good father in the future." "Huh? How do you know?" Looking at Wanda, Lin En asked with a smile. "I just know." Looking at Lin En with great certainty, Wanda replied. Having been in a relationship with Lin En for such a long time, Wanda has long been sure of what kind of person Lin En is. He is responsible, patient, and loving. More importantly, he is not lacking in the responsibility of a man. Such a man will definitely be a good husband and father in the future. Even if Wanda has never seen such things in the theater, she is very sure of it. Looking at Wanda, who has been developing more and more in the direction of love since being with her, Lin En smiled and held her fair hand. Having a girlfriend who is devoted to you, it must be said that this is own luck. Since Wanda and Pietro activated their supernatural powers, Lin has been helping them master their abilities in the past few months. Pietro and Steve trained together, while Lin helped Wanda get familiar with the scarlet magic. Lin didn't know exactly how strong Wanda was at the moment, and perhaps she hadn't yet reached the level of tearing Thanos apart. But Wanda now had her own help, and was definitely a bit stronger than she would have been a few years later. Well, this can be seen from the fact that she used scarlet magic to shatter the glass and then reassembled it. Although the reassembled glass changed from an ordinary shape to a short round shape. Took a deep breath, feeling the unique fragrance of grass in the breeze. Wanda leaned on Lin's shoulder and stopped talking, but felt the hard-earned peace in her heart at the moment. Of course, It would be better if no one disturbed the two at this moment. Feeling a special but familiar energy coming from behind, Lin and Wanda turned their heads at the same time. Seeing a figure appear in the empty space behind them, she was smiling at the moment, staring at the two of them. Oh my God! After seeing this woman, Wanda was stunned at first and then frowned. Because the woman in front of her looked exactly like herself. That is, she seemed to be 4 or 5 years older than herself. But if she just looked exactly the same, it would be fine, but the energy she exuded was actually the same as hers. To read the exciting novels, go to Falloon Novel Network. Even her scarlet magic felt purer and more powerful than hers. Long time no see, dear. Looking at Lin, Multiverse Wanda smiled and greeted her, and without waiting for Lin to speak, Multiverse Wanda set her sights on Wanda. You are Lin En's future wife, the same identity as me in this universe. Who are you? Looking at the person who is a few years older than herself, Wanda subconsciously showed a trace of crimson magic in her palm. Looking at Wanda's alert and surprised look, Multiverse Wanda chuckled and said, "Who am I? Of course I am Wanda. But you are really jealous. Do you know how much I hope that there is also Lin En in my universe? So, why do you have Lin En, but I don't?" Hearing this woman who claimed to be Wanda of the multiverse, Wanda's eyes suddenly flashed with vigilance. Because Wanda heard from her that she wanted to snatch her boyfriend from her. Looking at Wanda, who was like a little lion, protecting Lin En as if protecting her own territory, Multiverse Wanda chuckled. "Are you worried that I will snatch your man from you?" "It's useless, Wanda. You have to know that there will definitely be more than one me in the future who will snatch him from you. Because as long as we are in the normal universe, all Wanda's obsessions are the same." Hearing what the Multiverse Wanda said, a flash of red light flashed in Wanda's eyes. Just as she was about to speak, she saw Lin En patting her shoulder. Seeing Lin En's gentle smile, the red light in Wanda's eyes gradually disappeared. Yes, he is her boyfriend, her husband, and the father of her future children. Then, she should believe in him. Even if more multiverses come to snatch him away, she should be full of confidence. After all, he is hers. After comforting Wanda, Lin En looked at the Multiverse Wanda and asked, "Wanda, why are you here? Is there something wrong?" "Hee, of course, dear." Looking at Lin En, the Multiverse Wanda smiled and said, "Because I regret it. I shouldn't give you to her. So I came here this time to snatch you away from her. You should belong to me and be my husband, not her boyfriend." Multiverse Wanda's words were full of teasing, but Wanda blushed all of a sudden because of this sentence. The crimson magic in her hand became even more intense, and she immediately attacked the guy who wanted to snatch her boyfriend away. Seeing the two Wandas fighting without explanation, Lin En immediately stepped forward to separate them. But the result? Multiverse Wanda, this is a matter between us, dear. You just stand aside and watch the show. Wanda, dear, this is a matter between me and her. I will never allow anyone to take you away from me. Wanda, bastard, you are not allowed to call him dear. Seeing the two Wandas stopping him from joining in at the same time, Lin En could only stop helplessly, carefully dispersing Wanda's scarlet magic attacking him. Multiverse Wanda laughed and said, "Is that all you have? If this is all you have, then you can't stop other Wandas in the multiverse from coveting Lin En." Hearing the ridicule of the Multiverse Wanda in front of him, Wanda's face flushed instantly, and even scarlet magic flashed in her eyes. Two beams of scarlet magic energy attacked Multiverse Wanda. But the next second, the two energies were stopped by Wanda of the multiverse. That's right. The more angry and hateful you are, the stronger the magic energy you release will be. Come on, try harder. Let me see if you're determined to protect your future husband and your family. Listening to the stimulating words of the multiverse, the crimson magic energy in Wanda's hand became more powerful. Do you want to see my determination? The next second, crimson magic energy surrounded her whole body. Wanda looked at her sharply. "I will let you know what true determination is." Boom! As the majestic crimson energy continued to gather, when it reached a certain critical point. The two magic energies exploded instantly. The powerful air wave brought by the explosion directly destroyed the surrounding trees, and even the originally emerald green grass carpet turned into a wasteland in an instant. When the smoke of the explosion dissipated, the two Wandas were still standing in the air. But this time, Wanda's body was bound by the chaos magic released by the multiverse Wanda. But the multiverse Wanda was still stimulating her. It seems that your determination is still not enough. Wanda, with your strength, you can't protect your Lin. Look, this is your future. Do you really want these things to happen? As soon as the voice fell, the chaos magic directly entered Wanda's mind. The next second, Wanda seemed to see Lin and other multiverse selves together very happily. And she was like a dog who prayed for happiness but couldn't get it, and could only stand far away and watch the happy picture of Lin, other Wanda, and their children. On the ground, Lin, who had originally flown into the air and was ready to intervene at any time if there was a slight overreaction, found something wrong. Before Wanda showed up, this person stayed with me for 20 years. The multiverse Wanda of 3 days did not seem to come to rob her, as she said. She constantly used words to stimulate Wanda, and at the same time used chaos magic to guide the chaotic energy in Wanda's body. It was more like she was trying to make Wanda more powerful so that Wanda could control chaos magic more easily in the future. Seeing that Lin En understood her thoughts, the multiverse Wanda winked at Lin En. The multiverse will become more dangerous and has gradually involved your universe. Looking at the chaos magic in Wanda's body that has been mobilized, Wanda of the multiverse turned to Lin En and said, "The Ancient One of this universe is still alive, so there won't be too many problems for the time being. But once she dies in 5 years, you will face an enemy that is too powerful to imagine. Dear, you are the anchor of this universe, but Wanda is the one who can truly save this universe in the future. If she can't master the power of chaos in advance, then even if she has the blessing of the Dark Book or the Book of Ashanti in the future, the result will still be." At this point, a trace of apology flashed in Wanda's eyes. Originally, this storm should not have affected your universe. But Sylvie was escaping when she was, but in a hurry, he left the Time Controller on Thanos' spaceship. Chapter 58 and Chapter 73, Another Pit is Filled. This allowed Thanos to get the Time Controller. Although he urgently launched the compensation program in the end, a new branch on the timeline has been generated. We are not worried about the Thanos who has the heart of the universe. What really worries us is the Thanos who will get together with Victor Doom and Owen in the future. One is a madman, one is stubborn, and one will do anything to achieve his goal, but these 3 people all want to save their own universe. After a sigh, Multiverse Wanda said apologetically, "So in order to make up for it, we can only find a way to make Wanda stronger." Hearing Multiverse Wanda say this, Lin En suddenly thought of the time when he went to Europe to deal with a group of vampires. Sylvie suddenly appeared, and that day, Multiverse Wanda and Sylvie left together. On the day of the sunrise, the cardpin version of Loki told me that Thanos broke into the Time Administration. It seems that the future is more terrifying than I know. Just as he was about to speak, he saw Wanda, who was bound and guided by chaos magic, suddenly burst out with more powerful energy. It was an energy that seemed to be able to destroy the world, and its terrifying sense of oppression even made Lin En frown unconsciously. Seeing this scene, the corners of Wanda's mouth in the multiverse rose a little. At the same time, he said, "Wanda, accept it, recognize it, remember it. Only in this way can you control it in the future." As Wanda slowly opened her eyes, the energy that could destroy the world, the Earth-like energy, also gradually dissipated. At the same time, the chaotic magic energy, Qin Zhao Zhao, bound her body, also gradually disappeared. She took a long breath, recalling the energy that had just burst out. Wanda looked up at her multiverse self, with a hint of complexity in her eyes. "Thank you." "You're welcome. This is just to make up for it." Falling from the air, A beautiful arc appeared at the corner of the multiverse Wanda's mouth. Besides, I have to borrow Lin En for a while. What? Hearing the words of the multiverse Wanda frowned for a moment. Don't worry. My purpose this time is not to take Lin away from you. Looking at Wanda's vigilant eyes, multiverse Wanda came to her side, raised her hands, and placed them on both sides of her forehead. We need the energy help of Lin's self-gem. As she said, multiverse Wanda released magic, allowing Wanda to clearly see the real purpose of her coming this time. Inside the Avengers base. Wanda, where's Lin? Seeing Wanda coming back, Tony Stark, who had just dealt with a group of flower vendors who fell from the sky, asked, You two stick together every day. Today, you didn't live in Lin's apartment, but came back alone. This is not easy. Hearing Tony's teasing, Wanda hadn't spoken yet, and Natasha, who had stopped the car with a drift, came down. This proves that Wanda and Lin have a good relationship, unlike you, Tony. But I know that you have stayed at the Avengers base almost every night these days, and even often drag Dr. Banner to study something, and every time you study until late at night. It was because Pepper ran here yesterday to pull you back that you didn't live outside the Avengers base last night. Why? Your relationship with Pepper broke down, and your love affair shifted to Dr. Banner. Hearing Natasha's teasing, Tony Stark looked up at the sky speechlessly. Pietro, who rushed back at super speed, only heard the second half of the sentence, and then looked at Tony Stark with a somewhat horrified expression. Damn it, don't look at me like that. Pepper and I have a good relationship, and I don't like men. Huh, that's good. If you really change your orientation, I will consider moving out of the Avengers base. Looking at Pietro's survivor look, Tony Stark immediately raised a middle finger. After Natasha laughed for a while, she asked Wanda, where is Lin? He left temporarily for some things. Thinking of the multiverse self who borrowed Lin to help, and did not let himself reveal so much for the time being, so as not to cause unnecessary trouble. Wanda thought for a moment and continued, he has some things to deal with, so he left the Earth during this period. Hearing what Wanda said, Tony Stark and Natasha looked at each other, thinking of what they had seen in the theater, that Lin had to accept the test of Nemesis every once in a while. Then they nodded. Damn the goddess of vengeance. I can't imagine what kind of torture Lin will encounter when he leaves the Earth this time. Pietro on the side glanced at Wanda, and then said in surprise, Wanda, your ability seems to be a little wrong. It feels like it's much stronger than before. As a brother of the same mother, although Pietro doesn't understand chaos magic or scarlet magic, he can sense the fluctuations in his sister's ability. This is more like a telepathy between twins, just like what Wanda felt the first time when Pietro died in the metatime. Hearing what Pietro said, Tony, Natasha, and Steve, who came out of base, all looked at Wanda curiously. Seeing everyone looking at her, Wanda nodded slightly. To be precise, my ability should be regarded as finding the evolutionary route. It's just that I'm not familiar with it yet, and I can only see a crack in the evolutionary direction of a scarlet magic. So I came back this time to explore this evolutionary route. This process may take a long time, but once we are familiar with and master this power, even if Thanos comes, we don't need to worry. After hearing Wanda say this, Steve and the other two immediately became serious. Everyone in the theater can see clearly how powerful Thanos will be in the future and everything he has done. So, after hearing what Wanda said, Natasha immediately said, Wanda, is there anything we can help you with? Not yet. Shaking her head, Wanda smiled and said, I just need to be undisturbed during this period. Pietro will take care of me in terms of daily life. After hearing what Wanda said, everyone nodded, and Pietro even said, Of course it's no problem. After all, I've been taking care of you since you were 10 years old. But who is Thanos, Bebby? Why do you all look so serious when you mention his name? Faced with Pietro's curious questioning, Wanda raised her hand and patted him on the arm. Don't be so curious. Hurry up and prepare some food for me. I'm going to study this power. Tisk, seeing that Wanda once again chose to hide herself and suppress her by force, Pietro shrugged and began to prepare. Nodding to everyone, Wanda walked toward her own villa in the Avengers base. Looking at the direction Wanda left, Steve said seriously, "If Wanda can really control the power she said, then this will be the best thing for the Avengers and even the Earth." So during this period of time, she and the Avengers members need to train together to increase their tacit understanding. The task will be temporarily canceled. No problem. Hearing Steve say this, Tony Stark nodded. Natasha, on the other hand, had a serious expression on her face. Wanda said that Lin left the Earth. "I think we should know where Lin went. I wonder if there is any way to completely save Lin from the curse of Nemesis. As a friend, I don't want Lin to be in this curse forever." To read the novels of Bao Shuang, go to Feilun Novel Network. After hearing what Natasha said, Steve took a deep breath, and after a few seconds of silence, he shook his head. "We don't have any way at the moment. Maybe in the future we will have a way to help Lin get rid of Nemesis. But now, we can only hope that Lin can hold on. He will definitely do it." Hearing Steve's serious tone, Tony Stark said seriously, "Lin is a real man. Nothing can defeat him or make him surrender. I know this, extremely confident." At the same time, in the battleship of Thanos in the universe, get ready. You are about to face the task given to you by the Great Master. The opportunity has appeared. As long as you successfully complete this task, then the Earth will be your kingdom. Hearing Ebony Maw's words, Loki grinned and spread his hands and said, "Of course, no problem. But can I know where Thanos has been recently? I can clearly feel that he is no longer in this battleship." "Shut up." Hearing that Loki did not respect his great master at all, Ebony Maw's expression was immediately filled with anger. "Next time, if you dare to call the master's name directly, I will let you know what real pain is. As for the rest, this is not something you should consider." After saying that, Ebony Maw immediately turned around and left. Watching Ebony Maw angrily leave his room, Loki, who originally had a smile on his face, now had a flash of anger in his eyes.
Hello, everyone. As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500+ novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.